Hi, Dinah.
How are you?
Morning, Dinah.
Good morning, and welcome to the Tuesday, May 14th, 2004 Eidelweiss Board of Commissioners meeting. And the first thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
I have something to add if it gets seconded.
Second.
I'd like to add a non-public session to the end of this, which would be to protect reputation. I'll give you those RSA numbers for the minutes later, and to discuss employee matters. With that, all in favor, if that's okay?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0 on the approval with that adjustment for a non-public session. Now we go on to approval of 4 sets of minutes. The first one starting with April 29th. I'll make the motion to approve those minutes. Nancy, do you second?
Second.
Discussion.
No.
Yep, they're good.
All in favor of 429 approval?
Aye.
3-0. I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of 4/30/24.
Second.
Seconded by Nancy. Discussion.
It was good.
All in favor?
Aye.
3-0 on 4/30. Next is May 7th, 2024. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Nancy?
Second.
Nancy seconds.
Great.
Discussion.
Yeah, they were
All in
okay.
favor?
Aye.
3-0.
Yep.
The fourth and final set for this week is May 11th, last week. I'm caught up.
It's a good thing.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Nancy
Second.
seconds. Discussion.
None?
All in favor?
Aye.
3-0. So at 9:01, we'll move to approval of the manifest, and that's a payroll manifest dated 5/17/24. And we're going to approve a manifest with a gross of $6,111.16. I'll make a motion to approve this payroll manifest.
Second.
Nancy seconds. Discussion?
So is this the first one we're submitting to do the new paychecks?
That's the plan.
Yes.
Okay, that's still trying to be implemented, but,
We don't know how many, if we jump through all the fire hoops, we keep asking if we've
okay.
verification. I
So
think
at this point, we don't know whether the employees are gonna get physical paychecks this week or whether the paycheck system will do direct deposit.
hopefully this is the first direct deposit.
Right.
Correct, and I made that clear in an email this morning as well.
Okay, yeah.
Good.
Okay, well then, but, all right, as far as this is concerned, yeah, I got no more discussion.
And while we're on the subject, because if I put it into a commission's report, I'm sure we'll forget to do it. Just, you want to pay attention to this, Dinah, and Wood.
Okay.
Yeah. There's 2 groups that get paid. We'll call it the employees get
Yep.
paid every 2 weeks.
Yep.
And the elected officials, what the QuickBooks calls the executives, and their budget calls the executives, get paid once a month.
Correct.
So yesterday it was decided that the first payment that's going to be done direct deposit through paychecks is really going to happen next month. We're going to start to get paid in arrears because we decided to tell paychecks that the pay date for the executives is going to be the 15th of the month. Well, that would be paying the executives in advance for the second 2 weeks. So we decided that it should be in arrears, that the first one done through, we're not going to get a check at the end of this month, or this month. We're going to get our first check direct deposited June 15th, and that will be for the month of May,
That makes perfect sense,
just so you know.
yeah. But I was the one who suggested the 15th when we were talking to paychecks, but it didn't.
We didn't get that far.
Yeah, I didn't get that far into, with the period covered, so that's good.
Well, Jennifer brought it up, and we hashed through that, so we decided that.
Perfect, thank you.
If it's clear to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's no further discussion on, did you get a chance to see this?
It's
The hours?
gonna-
She's signing it, so if there's no further discussion, all in favor of approving that manifest, say
Aye.
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 3-0. Five, 14. Okay, next on the agenda is DPW report starting at 9:05. So if we don't finish you up by 9:30 and Nick Skagel, the engineer, arrives, we'll probably pause and start with him because you might want to hear
Yeah,
at least the Grissom Road description.
right, or I was gonna suggest maybe if he was gonna be out there, if he hadn't been out there to look at it, I'd go out and meet with him out there. But if he's already done that, he's done that. But I kind of short and sweet today. I do have a revised thing for the dust control from Brooks. The way I see it, we're gonna get the 3,000 gallons, fill the yellow tank, and not try to worry about the tank on the back of the truck, so we can continue to use that for water and not have it tied up full of calcium at 163 per gallon. So there's the Brooks contract. That's cleaned up from the last one.
If you're gonna move off calcium chloride, I would like to say to the board that it's always been in my mind that we don't buy enough calcium chloride to do dust control for all of the through roads. And we should, when smoke clears from everything that we're dealing with these days, which it will happen,
Slowly but surely.
we will come out of the woods. We will, probably should have a session where we label all the roads that are through roads that are dust creators and have a program where they all get
Right.
calcium chloride, because I don't know if you have noticed that the roads that get calcium chloride, like Eidelweiss Drive, they look like they're paved.
Yeah.
Oh, that really
Part of
sets
it,
up,
yeah.
and I've seen
Nice.
guys actually burn rubber on them.
Wow.
Calcium chloride attracts all the moisture out of the air, and it's a coagulant. It binds all the fines together, and it makes the road very hard and controls the dust. So it's more than just dust control. It's actually prevents potholes.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It's good stuff.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is the thing that takes gravel away from roads is rain, obviously, but it's also wind, which I learned from Stuart Heath, is the wind carries an amazing amount of material away from a road. So don't racing cars that create dust clouds.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, and it's a good point. And I mean, dust. The dustier the roads, gravel goes off the roads by just cars driving on, creating the dust. So that's
Would you like this, are you looking to get 3,000 gallons delivered?
yes.
So would you like a motion now?
Yeah, I mean, they could bring that at any time, and then we go from there. I mean, like, again, I can't say how far 3,000 gallons is gonna go. I think we started getting, I think that tank filled a couple of years ago, but before that, we'd only get it like half filled. So we've gotten more and
So
more.
tracking what happens to this is a good thing,
Right,
good information.
right, absolutely.
Perfect.
Because we kinda gotta, it won't be an exact number, but a good number, because that white tank is like 700 gallons. And a lot of times we've mixed that with water, so we kind of 50-50 it or something like that. So we could kind of track it a lot easier, absolutely.
And would we use this before we actually put the grader back into operation, or will we wait for the grader to?
Probably wait until we start putting some fresh gravel, cleaning up the ditch lines first,
We'll approve this now anyway, but
and then
we'll
we could have it
we'll see
sitting
what you
there.
have to say about what you know about the grader.
Right. Well, I called him yesterday, and we'll go into that, and I'm just hoping to get it shipped down there. I figured, I asked him that question, he didn't get back to me. But as they're getting if it could get down there, and then it's sitting there waiting, I mean, obviously all those forms are sent back, so they're getting the parts that they need and all that type of stuff. If they could work on it here and there, I figure what the heck. So I don't know if that's something you guys wanna approve or make a motion on,
So,
if they say it's okay to hold.
if we had a bad situation, the grader is not disabled, we're just trying to protect it from further
Correct.
damage that we don't know whether it would happen or not.
Yeah, that's true too.
So having it around, should something happen, makes me say we should
Little
discuss
security
that.
blanket.
And if it's gonna just go down there and sit, it can sit here. I see the advantage of having it down there so the second they can begin to work on anything, it's there.
Right,
So that trade-off,
Yeah.
I'd really like to hear what he has to say.
right. Yeah, well,
One more call, one more email or
yeah,
something,
once I hear
and then
back.
do it. It's like, it doesn't sound like it's gonna be, it's only a matter of days
Right,
right now, from best we know.
we're hoping.
So let's ask him one more time what his schedule is and then decide,
Okay.
maybe next week,
Yep, absolutely.
if that makes sense to you.
I'm trying to understand this. I know I nitpicked a little bit last week. I'm not nitpicking this time, but I do have a couple questions, just so I understand.
Sure.
what
About the
we're getting
grader?
ourselves into. No, about
On
the
that,
dust
go
control.
ahead,
Yeah,
good, yes.
yeah. So, when Nancy's finished with that, I'll just ask and you'll
Yep,
educate me. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, I think this answers what was the issue last week, was, we are going to purchase 3,000 gallons, but they're gonna give us the price as if we had purchased 4,000 gallons, which is the $1.63. Do I have that correct?
He recorded at 163, the
Right.
4,000's out.
The 4,000, yes. the
That was
four-
when he was gonna load the 3,000 gallon tank and the tank in
Right.
the back of the truck. He's not doing that anymore.
Right,
But it
so
was-
they were gonna give us, it's a little bit more, it's a 5 cents upcharge for less than 4,000 gallons.
Okay.
So he was gonna give us the 4,000 gallon price.
Right,
At the 3,700
Right.
gallons.
Right.
With filling the truck. But that wasn't how it was written up, and I understand where Mark's, I mean, obviously you wanna see something in black and white, and it sort of was a little vague on that. So I just decided to waive that fee and give me the regular charge for under the 4,000 gallons, because I couldn't make it work with the 2 tanks
Okay.
and doing it that way.
Could take 4,000.
Right, I couldn't
get
take
that
the
price.
4,000.
all right. So how much are we buying? 3,700?
No, we're getting 3,000
Just
gallons
3,000.
is what our tank holds, the
Right.
one tank.
Okay.
At the 163, which is still cheaper than what we paid last year, I believe, through Allstate.
Okay.
Good to know.
So,
Then this says, let's see. There's something talking about contract period. Where is it? Yeah, a partial loads, a partial load at the end of the contract period will be acceptable, provided that a minimum of 1 full load is purchased prior to the partial loads. I don't see anything on what the contract period is. I don't think it really, I know we're gonna purchase it in time, it's just,
right,
do they say is a contract period 3 months, 6 months?
Right now, we're only purchasing this one tank for the year.
well, again, if you guys think we want more later on, I mean, that's something we could discuss. 3,000 gallons gets put down, let's say, by the end of July, and come September, you feel you want more, we could probably purchase more, I mean, if it was in the budget, I mean, that's,
Okay, so
So I don't know if.
maybe
that
we could just get a
directly-
verbal on this, what do they mean by, because it'd be nice if we have to purchase more to get the same price, that's all.
well, I would assume that I don't wanna
Yeah.
assume. but-
I didn't go into the fine, but I don't think the contract period is listed. Anyway, and then the next one, it says, the owner is responsible for providing the following: identify the roads to be treated, width of application, rate of application, is that to prove?
Okay, no, that's set up kind of as a broader contract. What they're doing also is they're putting this down for towns.
Right.
Towns are buying X amount of calcium and
And they
Brooks
apply it?
themselves are applying it too.
See, so Woody could
Oh,
strike
it's a
through that.
standard.
Right, so
yeah.
we apply it ourselves.
Right, so we're
That's
not,
what-
that's not anything to do with us in the contract.
Gotcha.
We're
okay.
just looking at buying it at that price.
All right, I was just wondering, because it says scheduling is on a first come, first served basis, but
Right.
that has nothing to do with
No,
purchase of the actual calcium chloride, that has to do with
right,
if they do the service.
They're
of
going
it,
as
yeah.
far as they're grading the road, calcium the road, they're doing all that type of subcontracting themselves
Okay.
at this point.
So
We're
this is
just
a
purchasing
lot
the
of this is
product.
boilerplate that doesn't apply to us.
Right, we're
Okay.
just purchasing the
You can
product.
strike through that, just to make it clear, we're getting a delivery to a tank if you want it.
Okay, just strike through this. Not
The
applicable.
application part, road application part.
This right here, right?
Yep.
Just gonna say NA.
Yeah, I mean, they know all that, because I've
I'm
talked.
sure you would see a larger price if they were including hours and,
Yeah, yeah, and bringing their equipment in
You know.
to put it down.
yeah.
Ooh. No, that would not be honest. All right. So I guess the only question is what the contract period is, but otherwise it's pretty straightforward.
Right
Right,
now, it's one delivery.
Yeah, one
Right.
delivery. Okay. Good.
Further discussion?
We don't have a,
Vote on it.
we haven't done a motion yet for approving this and signing it.
I'll make a motion that we approve a GW Books contract for calcium chloride for the amount of $3,000.
Second,
3,000 gallons.
3,000 gallons.
gallons,
3,000
3,000
gallons.
gallons.
Which is over $3,000.
right.
Almost, anyway, almost
Almost
six.
5,000. Yeah, it's over 5,000 because it's $1.50, $1.63 now. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 6, close to 6.
Nancy seconds for discussion?
Yes,
Further
Aye.
discussion?
No?
All in favor?
aye,
Aye. 3-0. And I'll sign this?
yes.
I just have a comment. It doesn't have anything to do with approval, but if you could, you can even call me. It'd be really good to get video of dust being thrown up by vehicles. Okay? This is just one of those things we may need to explain to our constituents in the future, why these costs exist, why this is laid down, and, you know better than anybody, and Tony.
There's a lot.
my house.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's a lot of homeowners in here
That
that
know.
know that.
They
that know
are well
already.
aware, yes.
And
yes.
they ask me constantly,
Why
when's
isn't this in front of
this
my
road
house?
getting dust
I know,
control and stuff, but oh, absolutely.
But those who live on the nice asphalt paved roads don't.
Right.
Or your road that gets the most calcium chloride?
Yes, well, that's a through road, so gets
Yeah.
the most traffic.
No,
It's a through road for the town.
you watch the FedEx guy drive through the district and you'll understand
Yes.
how that looks, that dust looks like pig pen in the peanuts walking down the road.
Right.
That FedEx drive is a whole separate meeting.
Right. But no, that's, I could try to capture that on video.
Okay, it's just that, you said this price, the 163 is actually less than last year?
I believe so. I mean, I don't know exactly what we paid last year, but that's what I was led to believe.
All right, the point is I'm saving it. There was a very interesting article in the Wall Street Journal this morning about how businesses are they're being clobbered by inflation and costs that are way higher than even last year.
Right.
And they've got no choice but to pass these on to their consumers. And, we're no different. We're sort of like a business. We don't make a profit. but
I know.
We have costs, and
Absolutely.
everything is going up.
Yep.
The inflation spiral.
Yeah.
Spiral. In the wrong way.
You thought this was gonna move quickly, eh?
Yeah, right. So, yeah, we're still picking up brush. We've been doing some pothole work. Our gravel pile's dwindling down because there's been quite a few of them. I don't know if we want to move on getting another couple of loads or not. Again, it's not like it's going to waste because it's in the roads. And I mean, I don't have the 18 back. He says he's waiting on a part was supposed to be there yesterday because I want to get the 7400 in to get that set up, but I've been reluctant not having the dump truck.
I've seen that you did Big Loop, you did Little Shore
Yeah,
with filling potholes by back dragging and applying gravel.
right.
I saw it on Hotwell.
Yep,
It looks like the Hotwell parking lot got some.
we did
at
some
the
there.
very beginning.
Yep,
I think Burn got some.
Burn has gotten some. Yep,
And what haven't I seen?
Little Shore's gotten some.
I said Little
You
Shore.
said Little Shore.
Young
That big
File?
loop area. Jungfrau is not yet.
Jungfrau is one that you would do.
We're gonna get over in Jungfrau, where Tony actually was bringing some by the bucket over towards where Appenvale meets the pavement. There were some pretty big ones right through
So
there.
roads like Jungfrau and Appenvale are through roads, but don't get the traffic, I don't think. And let's see whether this is your opinion, that Little Shore does, for
Right.
example. So you got Little Shore, Hotwell gets a fair amount of traffic.
Yeah, we got a little bit more we want to do up there. We did before the one with the flag. We got to get a little bit after the flag there.
I'd say you
Over by
covered
the
the ones that most people lose their dentures over.
Yeah, we
Right.
got. That's what we were shooting for, was the really big ones that you're losing.
I was watching
Your front
pickup
ends.
trucks zigzag going through Hotwell.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, in Eidelweiss Drive, outside of Eidelweiss in Madison, you should see the way people are driving through that. That really needs it.
Well, Madison finally graded their portion of Eidelweiss Drive yesterday.
It had to be yesterday.
Yeah, and it was, you know, good contrast and comparison for anybody going to, here's Eidelweiss, nice, Madison.
It was
But it's
really
good
bad.
now. It's good
So
now.
good.
Yeah,
Good for Madison.
yeah.
Nice job then.
That'll shave off people's time cutting through now.
Yeah, to make
Yes,
them
to
go
go
faster,
faster.
because it's not always a good thing.
Be 45 all the way from in there.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
So yeah, so like you say, we've gotten the major ones that we've talked about getting are done.
But you're sure you're gonna need more gravel?
We're gonna buy more gravel anyway, but
Right.
it's whether it's the priority now because you've covered most of the issues,
Right.
from what I know.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'll finish that up probably today with the major ones. So we had a little incident, I'm sure you've seen the flags and the tape over there on the playground. Ashblunt's been doing a lot of work in here, and you know, they're doing a nice job, but unfortunately they backed into the fence post over there in the corner. They owned up to it. They're willing to make it right, you know. So I got the number. I wanted to ask you guys, do you want me to call the fence company? Their tag sitting right on the fence post, who installed that. I could call them up, see if they could come out and repair the damage. What they were concerned was that because some parts broke and there's some sharp edges there, they don't want to see any kids get cut.
They put the flagging tape on it, or did we?
They put a little and we put some.
Have you seen this? I have. a
I
picture
have,
of it.
I went down, Carrie and I walked by it yesterday, I even discussed that with Doug, if Asplund, because I assumed that's who did it, but I wasn't.
Yeah, no,
100%
I got the number for Ashblunt. I mean, we could send them the bill. That's the way that.
Will they pay the fencing company directly, or is it a reimbursement to the DDO?
That's what I'd like to know.
I'd have to ask the guy over at Ashblunt, you know, well, first let's see what it costs, get an estimate on what they think the fence company's gonna, you
It
know.
would be much better if they just pay them directly.
Yeah, and then you could send the bill right to Ashblunt. I mean, I'll try to set it up that way.
That would be good, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to be insured for that kind of stuff.
Well, that's it. Like, the guys were really good. Here's the guy's number, here's, you know, who to talk to, and
Yeah.
so I've got all the contact information for all that. I just didn't know how you want me to move forward with it. If that's
It's a
how you want.
matter of whether we should be contacting them versus tying up the highway department doing stuff like this. You know what I mean?
Do we own that fence?
The
I
village
believe-
owns it, yes. The EPOA donated a lot.
Donated, yeah.
But the fence goes back so far, I couldn't tell you. There was a playground there before the EPOA took over and
Right.
started buying equipment for it 30 years ago, 35 years ago. So the original fence, no matter who paid for it originally, it's now the property of the village.
Okay.
So, it's a decision, two decisions is, do we want to pay for it directly and chase Asplunk? And who should be doing the administration of getting this all started? Should it be the highway department employees or the commissioners and the administrator? Not that we need more to do, but
Right, well, you said you have all the contact data for the, both the Asplund
Yep.
and you
And the
know,
phone,
the
the
fence
fence
company?
Yep.
They're local?
Yeah, well, I mean, if it was put in 30 years ago, they were local 30 years ago. It was out of Conway.
All right, but they're still in business, they're still around. Oh, you don't know?
We don't know.
Yeah.
That's a call to
Okay, so that's still a question that's open, okay.
It's over 30 years ago, that fence.
You know,
All right,
you had a 447 number, I mean.
It might not even be the original fence,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not,
for all I know.
I didn't make the phone call, I wanted to talk to you guys first.
Well,
Why don't you get the information to the office
Okay.
and let me chase it first?
Okay.
Because you taking phone calls while you're out doing road work doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
okay, no problem.
So
That's,
we'll take it from here, and if it's too ugly a job to do, we'll throw it back to you.
perfect. Perfect, I like the ugly.
All right, but we should also find out
We should also, we'll
From
contact Ascon too,
Ascon.
so if you have that contact
I
information.
do, I have his
who
name
pays,
and number.
their insurance
Yes.
company, or do they pay us
I'll
directly?
try to get
or-
it so that we get out of the middle of it, that we're
Yeah.
not tying up our cash
Right.
waiting to chase
Right.
Ascon for
Exactly.
reimbursement, so,
We can't tie up our own cash.
no.
Yes.
So we put the cement blocks, the barriers down by Grison right after the meeting last week, so that's all set down there, a lot better. And other than that, we fixed that we were lucky with the hot water tank that it was just a pressure relief valve. I don't know if you saw the bill for Webb there, $32 for a pressure relief valve, so
Nice.
we took care of that and that worked for that, so.
Good.
And
Less
that's
than a
all I
meal
got.
out.
Very good. I was down at Grison, and well, Nick is here, so Nick was scheduled at 9:30, it's 9:25. We could start with Nick, and if you want to stay, we'll start with Grison, seeing how he brought it up. And this is
timing
Jeff
was
DiMartino, this is Nick's schedule,
How you doing?
and this is Warden McNiven,
Hello?
and you probably remember
Nice to see
the
you.
infamous
Nice
Nancy
to
Cole.
see you.
And this is Jennifer Scully, our administrator.
Hey.
This is Nick's schedule from DuBois and King Engineering. If you want to take a seat up here, anywhere you'd like,
Front row, maybe?
yeah. Maybe sit next to Dinah, the microphone's right there. So
There, okay.
Asia
My
can
warm
pick-
seat.
What's wrong with me?
No.
So I sent an email that you saw a copy of to Nick to say that there's three things that we wanted to talk about. One was Grissom Road, and the other one was the Como Zone project that we've been talking about. And the third one was
Uranium filter.
uranium. So let's start with Grissom Road. To give you the catch-up where we were, we had a discussion at the annual meeting. Let's back up further than that, is the previous board asked a contractor from Freedom to give a price estimate for a box culvert installation on Grissom and a box installation culvert on Bergdorf.
Using the plans that we had prepared?
No,
Okay.
no, which I don't understand, and there was in their quote, which was over $600,000 for Grissom and over $400,000 for Bergdorf. Neither said the size or any specification, just said box culvert. So those were done at the cost of $1,200, $1,295 I think, which gave FEMA, and it was done for FEMA because that was damaged again, as you know, during the July storm. And then you also know, so that was the background. We went to the annual meeting and said, we have these two bids not against the state-approved design that was done in 2017, I think, actually, if I remember
We're on
the
that.
Yeah, I want to
documentation.
say, I think we even, I don't know if I was involved, but we did an extension of the permit as well, because the permit is good for 5 years.
Yes,
Yes.
it
So
was
I
an
think-
extension.
I think it's now, I looked it up and I think it's till 2028 or something like that now.
So we never got a contract price for that. And let's assume that it's the same, or even maybe less, because the engineering estimate for the actual cost was done years ago, and they were a little less, but in that area, and inflation has probably taken those numbers up to where this recent one is. So we had some numbers. It was qualified by saying it wasn't done against the spec. And regardless, the voters were not looking to spend over $1 million to solve this problem that was created in the 60s by the design that they did, which was gonna result in the problems that we have.
Yep.
So, the discussion during the annual meeting was, well, can we get FEMA to pay for it, you know? And FEMA is open into listening to this. They give no guarantees on reimbursement. And they would extend the July storm dates, but the bottom line is, in any situation, FEMA wants you to pony up all the money, fix it, everything first, and then submit it for a reimbursement of 75%. So we would have to raise over $1 million regardless of what FEMA may do. And once they heard that, that was the end of that discussion at the annual meeting. That leaves us with the current state of Crescent Road with a culvert that is creating a crater in the middle of the road, a sinkhole. I went down there yesterday and took some measurements. The opening of the hole at the top of the failed culvert is now 8 feet wide. And I now understand what you were saying to me a week or so ago, is that it's not visible all the way down. Nor can you get close enough to actually look, but without getting near the edge of it, which is caving in, showing signs of caving in, particularly on the west edge of it, going back towards 113 side.
Okay.
So that the hole at the top is going to get bigger and bigger. I believe there's some site, I've seen culverts fail. I imagine the hole at the bottom may be like this, and gradually it's just falling down through the hole, and the water is carrying it away, and that's creating a funnel type effect going back to the top. So the top's getting wider as this hole, which may be getting wider as it's passing gravel through. This is my imagination. So jumping ahead, I measured from the top of the road roughly to the bottom of the water feeding into the oldest culvert at the bottom. And it's about 14 feet. So originally in the 60s, 1962.
Can you see from the top, can you see that the hole goes all the way down to?
No, right now,
Because there's a top culvert too, right? We don't,
off, away from it.
okay, so it's not the
They're
top
not lined
culvert
up.
that's failed?
Not at all. No, it's definitely the bottom.
Definitely the bottom.
And
Can you see through the bottom? Like if you get in the stream, can you see daylight through it?
I don't think
I
so.
mean, it's flowing, I guess.
Right.
No, it's not a
still
straight-
passing
it's
it's not
water.
a straight run of pipe. You can't see daylight, in the best conditions, you can't see daylight
It's
because
not, there's an angle in it.
from what's been described to me, there's two pieces of pipe.
Yeah.
There's an insert into the original pipe, and the pipe that goes to the exhaust end is tilted down.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so from the description, it sounds like it does this. The input comes this way and the output goes like that. So looking in,
Changes slope.
there's no light.
I think so.
We used to have a gigawatt flashlight, a big light. Candle power was measured, like 1,000 candle power or something like that. I don't know if we have that. Was
I've
years
never
ago.
seen
Years
that
ago.
work. I've never
think-
used it. I don't even know if
I
it's
think
still
Steve
around.
Pannone bought it,
I believe it was.
so that was.
Maybe you could float a camera down there or something.
Well, I was.
Can I say something?
Yep.
So, initially when the pipe failed, was it 2012 or,
Yep.
you know, when that failed, when they repaired it, that's when they stuffed the smaller pipe into the big pipe.
Yeah.
I've been down in there, I can't see daylight through the
Yeah.
pipe. I've never been able to see and I've only been here after that. I came in 16. So, yeah, you can't see daylight through it, but that's what had happened. So when the pipe failed initially, they necked it down and stuffed the pipe into the big pipe. How they sealed that, I don't know. But that's when the overflow pipe was installed
Yeah.
as
And
well,
it's corrugated
off to
metal.
the side. Right, it's a metal pipe.
So where it's failed, I mean, that's a tough fix too, because it's like, how do you find where it starts to become, you know, competent structure that you can then leave? Usually
Right.
when you start fixing those things, you just chase them till you've completely replaced it.
And that's where you're at.
Which now we're back to the box culvert and
Yeah.
we're permitted to do. So I really wanted to hear, if we just took that piece of road out, so what I measured was that it was 14 feet from the top of the road to the bottom of the water going
Yep.
into the culvert. by bending a tape measure over the edge. And the rough measurement of how far that road filled that natural ravine was 45 feet. So if the ravine's like this, in the 60s, what they did was filled it in 14 feet down and 45 feet across, roughly.
Yeah.
So I imagine that to get permission to not have to spend $1 million in box culverts to solve this problem the permitted way, that we would be seeking permission to close that road as a through road and take all that stuff out of there, which leaves us with the problem of the water main that runs through the top of this 14-foot road that fills in this ravine, 6 feet down, right? The water main runs above the culverts, but 5 or 6 feet below the grade, which got exposed when the road got wiped out twice. What do we do with that water main if we excavate all of that out? This sounds like an expensive project to avoid spending 1.2 million.
Yeah, and you'd probably have to get it underneath the stream, right? I mean,
Which we've done in other places.
you could do,
Would have to ramp the
theoretically,
pipe
maybe you
down.
could do a utility bridge, which would be like just
Just
big
the
enough,
pipe?
just, some kind of structure that would hold the pipe. But that seems kind of silly, like.
Well, a
to me.
footbridge wouldn't be so bad for the locals there
Yeah,
if it doubled as a head.
yeah,
How do you keep it from freezing?
insulate it,
Let the heat of the water?
insulate it and heat tape it. I mean, you can do both. Like, we've hung water lines on bridges over the Merrimack River. I mean, it's a little bit different climate here, but you probably have 3 inches of insulation. It's wrapped around the pipe. It's like a pipe wrap, and then a plastic shell that goes around that to kind of just hold everything in place. You can, depending on what you have for a power source, you could potentially put in a, heat tape type of piece of wire or something that, either
Sounds-
is connected to a thermostat
Could you
or
put a
something.
bleeder near it? Could you put a bleeder near it?
We're trying to get out of the bleeder business.
Yeah, I don't know what, DES probably doesn't want you putting in any.
I think the way to do it is to run the pipe under the culvert.
Yeah,
When we ran the forced main from the DPW well up to Jungfrau, the state required that we go from high-density plastic pipe to iron under the Grissom culvert, which is a major culvert that drains all the ponds out to Banfield Brook. Also, we have a water main that runs under the Big Loop culvert, so we'd be doing the same, except this whole thing is way down below the road level.
yeah, you're if you're abandoning the existing culvert, you're gonna be digging a pretty good amount anyway, so you're gonna get down to the bottom of that stream bed, or the invert of the stream bed, so then you've gotta go probably, I think you probably could get away with a shallower burial there, where like you might be, ideally you'd be 4 feet. You could be a little less than 4 if you wanted to try and sleeve it with some insulation. There's directional drilling that could be possible. I don't know what kind of, soil material is there. I'm guessing it's probably ledgy rock that is what's causing, that's the reason why you have a stream there, is it can't go down, it's going across. But yeah, I think you would try and sleeve a larger diameter a larger diameter conduit that you could put the water line in. That way, if you have a break in the line, you don't have to dig it up again. You'd just be pulling it in and out of a sleeve. I don't think that it's not an uncommon practice to try and, run a water line under a brook. We've done it, you know, we've done it for larger brooks that we've done directional drilling on.
So say, I know that the water mains that run under the Big Loop culvert and the Grissom culvert only are exposed to the colder temperatures for a few feet as the shape of the culvert lets cold air down in there.
Yeah.
So those are not 4 feet down, those are,
No, I mean, this is probably not, the existing water, this probably, I don't know how close that water is to the top of the culvert, right? So any air that's in that culvert is exposed to
it's closer to the overflow culvert than it is
Yeah.
the bottom one,
so I mean,
which is a bigger culvert too.
it, you know, part of it would depend on how much flow is going through that area, you know. If there's not a lot of flow, you're obviously more susceptible to freezing just because you don't have moving water. Is that, because that's part of a loop that would take stuff down off of Aspen. Does it come off the Aspen PRV and then basically feeds that whole little Grissom-Bergdorf area, right?
Yes, Bergdorf doesn't have a through main, water main.
Yeah, there's no water main at that culvert at all, right?
It stops,
Yeah,
there's a
dead
new
ends on
line
either
that got
side.
installed for Habitat of Humanity
Mhm.
that stops short of going over that culvert.
Yeah.
So, we talk to FEMA every Thursday morning, and if we were to come up with a ballpark of what it would cost to take that road out of that ravine and run a water main down under, there'd be no culvert there now. It would just be whatever we
Right.
did for the finished grade. And it might include blasting to get it down through the ledge that's at the bottom of that, because I figure there's ledge there also, because it would have been cut deeper and deeper, like
Yeah, blasting or some kind of
drilling.
drilling, yeah.
How much? Just roughly.
I'm not gonna
There's
have no
no
idea.
way.
I mean, I don't know, I mean, drilling can be drilling in rock, you know.
Getting the drilling equipment down there.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably talking somewhere between, I would guess between $500 a foot and $1,000 a foot, somewhere in that range. I mean, that's a big range, but it's probably, you know, it's hundreds of dollars a foot for directional drill.
Is the state gonna require any additional cost in bringing it back to some natural setting?
I mean, you'd have to do a new permit. You would have to do a new permit that shows what your new work would be. You know, you would think because you're restoring a natural flow that it would be pretty straightforward and easy. Sometimes it's not. Dealing with state permitting is never
I'm afraid.
as quick as you think it's gonna be. The rules have changed in terms of mitigation on linear footage of stream impact. I think you'd probably have a pretty successful argument that the project is self-mitigating because what you're doing is restoring a stream. But you're probably in the threshold of like linear footage of stream impact that you would technically need to prove that you just have to say, you know, they would say you need to do mitigation. You would try and make the argument of what your project is mitigation for restoring a stream. They're gonna want you to look at how are you armoring things? Are you doing like step pools with, you know, logs that are, you know, embedded into the embankment so that it stays stable? And that gets, I mean, that's beyond my expertise as an engineer in terms of like stream restoration work. There's people that, you know, I think we'd have to either get a sub-consultant or you would have to hire a consultant that would, you know, a natural resources type person that would be able to guide you on how that restoration plan looked so that you could bid it.
I just saw
But
the number
theoretically,
up
you
over
know.
$200,000
Yeah, I
for this
mean,
project.
I was gonna say, is it
Whether it's
conceivable
cheaper-
this project would cost as much as putting that box culvert in?
My original thoughts heading into this was closing the road is gonna be incredibly surprisingly costly.
Right, we knew
And
that,
are
but,
we 2/3 of the way towards the box culvert?
right.
We actually made that comment at the annual meeting,
But you,
saying that it was gonna be just as expensive, or we would
Could-
have to look to see how expensive it would be to close the road. That we knew there would be significant expense no matter what we do.
but what we're learning today is, the fact is, it's incredibly difficult to even do an estimate
Yeah.
without spending thousands
Right.
of dollars to start honing in on what this is really gonna cost.
Yeah.
And then in an inflationary environment, it really comes down to, it's a complete design that's gonna cost a lot of money to put it in front of as many contractors as you can to get a competitive bid. And by the time you're doing all that, tell me where the economy is and what contractors are charging. It was the price of actually doing the.
Assuming money was not an issue, just to get the design and then the bids for the actual work done, if they were about equal, I think our constituents would scream, well, then we should just put the road
Yes,
Yes,
back.
yes.
Right.
yes, fix the
Yeah.
road.
What I'm saying is, you can't make the argument based on a good number of how much it costs to take the road out without spending a lot of money.
Yeah,
That's the dilemma we're now in.
right.
Bob?
Just to,
Yeah, go ahead.
just jump in, we've been thinking, through annual meetings and so forth about, close Grissom, restore it, or do both Grissom and Bergdorf box culverts. There might be a third option here of doing the box culvert on Grissom. If it winds up throwing the whole load into Bergdorf and destroying that, there's no water main there, couldn't that be removed pretty easily? Close that road rather than Grissom?
Closing Bergdorf as a through road is a lot less expensive than closing Grissom as a through road.
Mhm.
And nature may do that all by itself,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
the environmental people hate that idea that that's the plan, because they don't want to see Bergdorf in the woods again. Lots of Bergdorf is in the woods from two events. So let's say that's where we are, is we thank you for that feedback. You help paint the picture for us as to what we need to discuss. Now, the issue of what we do for the immediate safety of that area from, I like to say, from having Lassie and Timmy fall in the well.
Yeah.
What do we do to protect a kid from walking into this 8-foot thing and finding out that it looks like there's a bottom to it that's within 2 feet of the top, and it really isn't, that it caves in and takes somebody with them? The idea is,
If you can, if
a
you
metal
think-
plate?
Yeah, I mean,
let me tell you that the previous board put a metal plate over the big loop culvert before we fixed it.
yeah, you add weight.
And the engineer that came in to do the design of the new culvert at Big Loop, she told us that that was a mistake, that we added the weight of the metal and they put 100 tons of gravel over that road, and she said, I wouldn't have done that at all. So that's why I thought I needed to ask you what you thought of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, could you cut back a little bit on the sinkhole so that it, it's not like that you cut the edges, knock the edges down almost just to kind of flatten it out so that it's a slope down to wherever the bottom of that hole is, as opposed to a vertical drop wall,
Well, if
I mean,
it's
it's
14
almost-
feet down to where the culvert's failing,
Yeah, I mean, you're cutting back at 1-to-1, then you're gonna have a 28-foot circle, right? 30-foot circle probably, or a 30-foot wide. But that's assuming that the hole goes all the way 14 feet at, a vertical kind of, and it's probably not, it's probably some kind of cone that's slowly getting into that culvert. I think from a safety standpoint, knocking down those edges so that, you're intentionally making it, fall while you're watching it, and you can kind of get it to a point where it's stable.
Do you know how far the
Um,
backhoe arm extends? Can it go down?
Yeah, I mean,
It has a long extension on it.
yeah, it's got the extender boom. I'm not positive. I'd say that's a 12-foot boom.
That's pretty good,
Yeah. I mean,
as long as the backhoe doesn't slide into the hole.
Yeah, I mean, the road needs to be closed, like, you know, barricades and
He's
all
got
that.
that.
Yeah.
Spray foam.
Yeah.
New source of material.
Right.
You can fill
Yeah, I
potholes
mean,
with
you
it.
could put some stone in it. I mean, you could put like a, you know, you could put some kind of like riprap or something in to try
That's
and-
what we had thought.
Jeff thought of that. I
Right.
thought
Fill it.
adding the weight directly over the hole like that would accelerate the culvert damage.
It might, but it
Unless
might be
it
what's,
binds
it
and-
might be what's the safest option in terms of, you know, it's not gonna, it shouldn't, like, it shouldn't be any more weight than what would be on it under a normal road condition, right? I mean, it's
Right.
probably gonna be less weight because it's gonna be less compacted, there's gonna be more voids in like a riprap. So you're gonna have, you know, the density of the soil of riprap is probably not as much as 95% compacted, you know, gravel.
I'm thinking the hole is in the center of the culvert. That's not the only thing that's weak down there.
No, I mean,
the
it's
whole
a
top of the
corrugated
column.
metal pipe that's rusted right out, right? The bottom was rusted completely out in
Right.
2017, I think. So, you know, I don't know if what happened is, you know, sometimes those things rust out, they settle, and then when they settle, the joint between each of those sections of corrugated metal will separate. And if it's a separated joint, then that's where you're gonna start, you know, and then you get enough water that's filling that pipe, it's gonna start grabbing soil at the top and pulling it into the pipe and pulling it into the pipe, and then that missing void settles, and then that missing void settles, and it's like it's you know, it's a degenerative process. It's not gonna get better, but I think, you know, adding riprap at the top is you know, is it gonna accelerate it any more than it's going now? I
So
don't
just
know.
at
I
the
mean,
top, when Jeff and I were talking about it, I was picturing that the hole continued to the bottom like I had seen it last year. And that the riprap was going right down to where the culvert is. But I'm now seeing that it's a 2-foot bowl that's 8 feet wide.
Yeah.
It filled in with the collapsing. If the rock is just in there, it might bind up and just stay up there. That's something I'd be willing to try. What I'm afraid of is making that whole culvert collapse and no water goes through it anymore. Now that becomes a dam and fills it up, and now what do we do? It's gonna go through the overflow culvert hopefully, but that's what took the road out, because that overflow culvert wasn't
Yeah.
put in the right place.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a good one.
to me, it's not, yeah, to me, as the engineer, I would say the right thing is to put a new culvert in.
Box culvert.
But, yeah, I mean, I think we did, one of the things we did after, I think getting some pricing, the district was a little bit like, I think concerned about whether the concrete box culvert was overkill, or, you know, was it a Cadillac and you wanted a Chevy. We did a drawing that showed metal plate arch, so like similar to what's, you know, a corrugated metal, but it's you know, it's treated differently so that it would be less susceptible to corrosion, but it's a, you know, like a con-span metal arch. So it would look more like a squash pipe or an oval, and maybe that's a less expensive alternative. But
Back in 2012, when we did the Big Loop culvert, the engineering spec was for a 72-inch elliptical squashed culvert. That cost $6,600 for the culvert. It came in 2 pieces, and it was steel coated with aluminum, and it had a big rubber gasket like this wide, and the two pieces of the steel went into the bed with this piece of rubber that connected it, so it was the inside was corrugated, wasn't smooth bore. We
Yeah.
looked at, the engineer thought she could get a high-density plastic smooth bore 72-inch elliptical, but there was nothing on the market for that. So that's what we ended up doing. And I'm looking at the fact that this 72-inch culvert takes all of the water from Big P, 142 acre. Now it's slow moving for the most part, but that's a lot of water that moves in these rainstorms. And I was thinking, why wouldn't one or two of these in Grissom do the job for a lot less money than a precasted box culvert? And that's what you're talking about is
Yeah, I mean, the DES rules allow for you to do an alternative design from what the rules require. So I
Uh-huh.
think when we were looking at the rules, you have to look at things like the stream, the bank full width of the stream, upstream and downstream, and they want you to look at, so if the stream is 8 feet wide, say, then they want an opening that's 8 feet, I think it's 1.2 times the bank full plus 2 feet. So you would be, 20% more of 8 is 1.6, right? And so 9.5, you're like 11.5, 12 feet. I don't know what we ended up with for our width on our Grissom, but, those are the rules.
I believe it's
If-
12 feet wide.
Yeah, if you propose an alternative design, you need to show that you're meeting, as much of the intent of the rules as possible, and then a reason why you would, we might not do the full bank full width, but it still meets the 100-year flood event, and we're proposing this because it's X dollars less. And, you can get kind of like a waiver or an approval as an alternative design. But again, you're gonna, that's gonna cost engineering money or to try and develop that. Whether it's how much you save, I don't know. I mean, I think one of the ideas was at least get some pricing on this and see if it was, how much cheaper is it, and is it worth it to pursue the alternative design. That's an option, I don't know if that's.
So let's try to close on this in the next couple of minutes and move on to the next subject. So what do you think about the idea of starting to scrape away at the top of that hole to bank it down
Yeah.
and use that material? Starts the excavation down and makes it a little safer. And then we'll try to put 6-inch rock in and see how that goes to make it safer for this summer while we figure out what we're gonna do. We don't know how much it costs to take that whole thing out and close the road. Nick is guiding us back towards looking at
Culvert.
fixing it.
But can I ask this, there is the design for, the original design for, was it a box culvert? That took place back in what, 2007, you said?
17.
17.
Yeah.
So that is still good up until 2028, do I understand that
He
correctly?
extended it, yes.
Okay, but that, if we were kind of like to make a rough comparison to what this estimate was done under the previous board, would be in the 600,000 or more range.
Right,
We're looking at an alternative now, which would require a new design.
upfront money.
Okay, so the first question is how much would the engineering design for this cost, and then
I
presumably
mean,
the construction cost would be less than that 600,000.
the new design is probably pretty close to being done, I would say. Like, I mean, this is the new design, I would say. It's, I'm looking at it, it's, 2017, so we'd have to put our eyes on it a little bit, but it's got a 100-year water surface elevation. Someone must have done some hydraulics on it in order to put that on the plan.
Where'd that plan come from?
Boy and King.
there a date on that?
July 2017. I don't know if it's the same exact date as what's on this one. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same title block, so it's just taken from that title block.
Okay, to use it in simplistic terms, especially for
November
non
8th,
engineer
2017,
types.
so.
The design there was really for a, again, simplistic terms, a Cadillac style
That's not the
structure.
box culvert. Is that the arch?
This one's the arch.
That's the lower cost
Yeah,
solution.
and I mean, this arch is just as wide.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a different material, but I think we had, you know, when we had, a concrete box is gonna last longer than a metal squash pipe. And I think that's why we had done it at that time. We were looking at, you know, what's the best bang for your buck.
Okay. But the point is, it sounds like we already have two engineering designs already, if they're not 100% complete, are most of the way there. So we're not starting from scratch with a
No.
whole new, you know, as you called it, a Chevrolet sort of structure to.
Does
No,
one other,
I think you have these drawings somewhere. I mean, I'm sure we've given them to you. I can give you them again, and then you could take them to a contractor and say, you know, is there a significant cost savings if we do this style of a culvert versus a precast box?
Yeah.
And I think that would give you data to make a better decision.
odds are that we won't find the engineering drawings.
But you have,
I can give you these. I
Right.
mean, I can give you this copy. I got 2 copies here.
you have them on
We're
file.
in
they're-
trouble finding last year's time
They're
card.
not for construction preliminary plans, so, you know, but
We
I
know
think
all those off.
We do have the box culvert designs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I've got those, I mean,
So, right after the big storm in July, Maggie Hassan toured the state. She happens to be the chair of the Senate Committee for FEMA. So she came to this room and heard a presentation by the fire chief, town clerk, tax collector, which was pretty good because he included the Eidelweiss Brisson Road culvert, which she went out and looked at. When she was here, she announced that FEMA came up with a new program where they would lend millions of dollars at incredibly low interest rates as FEMA to these kinds of projects. When I started to talk, the village took the July storm a certain distance with FEMA last year up through February, and then things stopped. And I'm trying to piece it back together. They want to meet every Thursday morning at 11 o'clock. And I have Jeff and Tony helping me because they were here and involved. I didn't get to hear any details about what went on during that time as a commissioner. So I'm not a big help other than I'm doing research into this. I asked, New Hampshire Homeland Security is part of these FEMA meetings.
yeah,
There's
they're
like 5 people at these
They're like the
meetings.
state rep, I think.
And I asked them, they seem to not know about what Maggie Hassan was saying in this room about these loans. The idea is, the dilemma is that we have to come up with all the money, do the project, and then hope that FEMA approves reimbursement up to 75%. You can't count on any of that, and nor can you count on them financing, except for what Maggie Hassan was saying, which they never came back to me and said, yes, we found the project and here's what you do to apply for that money. So what I'm thinking is, what we're concluding here is, putting the culvert solution is not dead, even though we didn't have enough to say at the annual meeting to
Right.
give people a good basis to decide.
Did Madison TV record that meeting with Maggie Hassan in this room?
I don't think so. No, it was on a Saturday. It was very impromptu at the last minute, and
I mean,
I
it's
would've- I
short-
think I would've
it's-
remembered.
Okay.
It's short notice, but the state has SRF funds, like their clean water SRF. So you guys have done drinking water SRF funds for tank or whatever. The state has clean water SRF, which is typically for wastewater and stormwater. I don't know if this would be a project that would be eligible. You know, there are some benefits to that. There are some strings attached, as you know. But that deadline is the end of the month, so it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know that you're gonna make it this year. I mean, maybe you limp it along for a year and,
That's what will happen.
yeah.
All right, so let's close out this discussion. We have two more to get through, and
Yeah,
he's
I just,
been
in
here.
conclusion, I think we need to pursue, are there really low-cost loans available for this kind of work?
Yes, that'd be the first step. And in the meantime, we can take what we learned here and see if we can make it safer in the meantime.
Yep, okay.
I'll spin over there on my way. Well, I'll go a little further east and then I'll head home, but maybe I'll go look at it. I did look at it in, whenever it was, February, July,
I was
January.
gonna say, you looked at it maybe
And
in
it was
middle of January.
It was
Snow.
8 inches of snow or something, and I couldn't.
Oh.
I mean, I could get kind of close. I didn't really know what was under the snow, so I was a little hesitant.
Yeah,
Um,
it was only a hole about like that then.
but you couldn't see the bottom of it that
Right.
either. You kind of,
No.
from my vantage point, it was.
Because it was filled in, or you couldn't get close enough to it without falling in.
Yeah, but I think it was more you couldn't get close enough to it because
I
there
saw
was just-
darkness. I
That's
decided
what I
to go
saw
down
too. It
deeper
was
than-
kind of like, yeah, I don't know what's under my feet.
Different story.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I
what,
was tied to a rope, maybe.
I mean, like you
Lassie was close by. I don't know.
Yeah.
it's 8 feet around, but it's probably what,
It's
2
8
and a
feet
half.
across.
Right, and in the other, both ways.
Both ways,
Right,
measure
it's
it both
pretty,
ways, 8 feet.
pretty circle.
Yep.
And it's probably what, 2.5 to 3 feet deep.
Right, today.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been in it because some of the cones fell in it, and I've jumped down, picked them up, and put them out on the edge as they got wider. You know.
I would say,
Oh,
I hope you weren't by yourself, because I decided that no
No.
one should go near that hole by themselves.
Right.
They need Lassie there.
So I know what you're saying. We'll taper it down a little bit because they kind of it's concaved a little bit on those edges.
Yeah.
And then we could put some stone in it. After you look at it, if you think putting the stone in it's a good idea, I don't know if you could call the office or something like
I can
that.
send an email.
Or
Yeah.
something, yeah. And then we could proceed and do that.
Okay, let's talk about the Como zone.
You don't need me, right?
You don't, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
you.
Have a good week, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Nice to
good
meet
luck.
you, Nick.
Yeah, you too.
So, my first question is, do you have access to the 2005 DuBois and King Master Plan? The book that,
Yeah, some I do. I haven't pulled it out in a while.
Okay.
I used to pull it out a lot.
because I think that we talked about the various things that can be done to improve the delivery of water to the Como zone. That's the problem. The first thing I wanted to say is, one of the things that I believe Paul Fluitt wrote into that was, one of the options is the first option that we talked about was improving the size of the pipe that comes from Oak Ridge Road down St. Moritz. And I believe we're talking about like 2,000 feet, roughly 2,500 feet, from a 2-inch or 3-inch line to a 4-inch line. But one of the things Paul talked about also was bringing the water in from a completely different direction, which was from the Jungfrau zone. And the reason for that was that the water only gets pumped once from the DPW well to get to Jungfrau, whereas the water that goes up Oak Ridge Road goes from Jungfrau, from the DPW well to Jungfrau to Rhineach, and then has to gravity feed back downhill to make it to the intersection of Oak Ridge Road and St. Moritz. So he was saying the cost of the water was cheaper if we tied the Como zone into the Jungfrau zone. I don't know what the distances are, but I think that we'd like you to take a look at that
Yeah.
before we commit to doing the design for the St. Moritz solution
Yeah.
down to the
And
Como
I,
PRV.
my concern with the Como zone is more after the PRV anyway, because if you do upgrades you could do upgrades to get more water to that PRV, but once that if that PRV is dropping the pressure, then, the upgrades upstream doesn't necessarily make that much of a difference because you're always dropping the pressure at that PRV down to whatever you're dropping it to, and then that's the starting point for when it goes through a 2-inch line along Burn, I guess.
The first road that Como comes into out of the PRV,
Hutwell.
Hutwell.
So Hutwell, and Hutwell has a length of whatever it is, 1,000 feet of 2-inch line that serves that zone. So that's where I was more concerned, is like, you dropped the pressure at the PRV, you're starting at a pressure, and then you have a long length of undersized pipe that drops it even more. And at the end of that long line, and everything pretty much had to go through that 2-inch, because the other way in Hutwell is a dead end. And I think one of the options was, do you loop Hutwell back around to Burn? Because that would give you, from the PRV, it would give you 2 directions to feed that zone. I don't know, so we'd have to, from the Jungfrau, we'd probably have to come off of, kind of like where Bergdorf is, right? What's the road that comes?
Gretchen is the road that comes into Eidelweiss Drive from that zone.
Yeah. So I think you'd have to come along Gretchen, along Eidelweiss Drive, and then Hutwell.
I forget where Paul said he would tie into the Jungfrau zone. I don't want to say Winnegon, but it's Winnegon. Winnegon gets its pressure. I shouldn't say that. I'm not sure. I need to look at the 2005 master plan again, because he spelled it out.
I don't really have any service here. I was going to try and look at a
No,
map.
there's no cell phone service here.
I was going to try and look at a map, because
You're in the country.
yeah.
So let's back up for a second. You got to solve one for me. Is that when Ian talks about that zone, he talks about having a recorder, a pressure recorder, on maybe the end of Burn. And the way that he talks about that is totally in terms of pressure. He's saying that if you have pressure there, then it's not a problem. And his solution is to keep tweaking the PRV up, pressure up, to increase the flow into that zone. And you wrote a memo saying you can't keep doing that because there's a reason for I'll interpret it, there's a reason that you have a reducer there, is that you don't want high pressures, because that damages distribution mains. It does damage to houses that don't knock it down internally with their own pressure reducing valves. So when I read Paul Flewitt's language, he talks about flow.
Yeah,
And
well,
Ian talks about pressure. And I distinguish between the two of those.
yeah.
Is that you can
I
see
mean,
good pressure, but you're not getting good flow.
Yeah, you're going to have wide range of pressures during wide range of flows. So under like static conditions or very low flows, you're going to have the highest pressures. So you still need that PRV for that instant when you don't really have a lot of flow, that you still want to protect the system from hitting a max pressure of whatever whatever you decide. 90 or 100 psi is really what you want for a max. And you would look at that pressure under a low flow scenario, because that's the worst case scenario for pressure. As you increase flow, that PRV is going to open up and try and maintain that downstream pressure. But if you're just increasing that downstream pressure, then yeah, I mean, eventually the PRV becomes it's not doing anything. It's not doing,
It's just open.
yeah.
So, were you saying that the solution,
But I mean, and I don't know what the flow is either, like, so we don't really know how much flow is going into Como. So like, part of it is,
metering?
yeah, well, or just like trying to get a better idea of like, could you even look at like, what's the total usage in the district and how many connections are in the Como zone, and just take a straight percentage, and then at least gives you a basis for a flow in that zone. At some point, I think I did a count of homes, but it was kind of like off of the town's tax cards, and I think you can tell which ones have homes on them by their they'll show it on their tax card as a home.
Then a
but-
huge factor is how many of those homes are full-time residents and how many
Yeah.
are
Absolutely.
weekends.
So, I mean, a
and-
meter would be great, you know,
Meter's
a
the
meter
right
would be
thing.
great, and you could have more data and know, like, what is your peak instantaneous flow there, and then what does that mean in terms of pressure?
So the voters approved 25,000 for this design, which would include testing, which I would think includes, if we wanted to install a meter so that we do a proper design by knowing what the flow is, that's what we do. We put a meter in
Yeah.
on the
And I think we
PMA.
talked about it, but the meter wasn't really gonna fit in there. I thought we were struggling to whether we had enough space to get a meter into that existing pit.
I don't remember that conversation. I don't know if I was at that conversation.
And meters have changed too now, where I think with the newer meter, we'd have to talk with the meter guy, like the manufacturer, the vendor, to see like straight length pipes before and after, so that you know that you're getting a true reading. But with new meter technology, it may be less. You know, you may be able to get something in a tighter space. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's a bad idea to include as part of design is data collecting and trying to, you know, really understand what's going on in that zone.
That zone
And
is
that would
getting,
help us whether, you know, what can Jungfrau support it, you know, and, you know, part of what you may, if it's coming out of the Jungfrau tank, then it would be a lower cost, but some of that water that's going into that zone is still gonna get pumped up from Jungfrau up to
right now.
the Rhinock, and then, you know, and then I guess it would come back down the bridle path and go into those PRVs that are on Jungfrau, Aspen PRV, I guess. Is that
The Jungfrau
come
PRV
around?
changed during the Rhinock tank project, and it was not documented how it changed. I don't know how the water flows to Rhinock, for example, from Muddy Beach wells anymore. We have to tell you about that.
Well, Muddy Beach always pumped to Jungfrau first, right? Muddy would pump from Muddy to Jungfrau and Jungfrau up to Rhinock. Pretty sure.
I thought Muddy Beach had impellers that could push the water all the way to Rhinock. That Muddy Beach, the Rhinock pumps were controlled by.
Maybe, but I didn't think there was a route to it because of PRVs coming down the hill off of the tank.
There was no
And you can't go
PRV away
backwards
from
into a PRV.
going up Lugano through
Yeah.
Salins, up Bristenstock to Rhinock. There were no PRVs, there are now. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, there's a gate valve that Bristenstock, I heard in passing, is now closed.
Yep.
That water can't flow off the new 4-inch main they put on Bristenstock for some reason, down to Salins. But we're getting far afield from Como.
Yeah, but I mean, it all is connected. I mean, you know,
It
I
is.
think part, you know, if we were to do a Como zone study, we probably would want to try and get that model tuned up a little bit with whatever changes have happened with the Rhinock tank in that zone, so that we know, you know, what's the best way to fix the Como zone. Is it to come off of Jungfrau and Rhinock, or is it to come off Oak?
One of the things about coming off the Jungfrau zone is Paul identified, I think, 4 lots that would have pressure problems if it just came from, the pressure coming from Jungfrau wasn't enough to keep good pressure at all of the hot well lots. And I read out of that there are lots that are high enough off the road that he knew that was going to be a problem for 4 lots.
Yeah.
4. And that area, it has got the most rapid development of any area in Eidelweiss,
I
because
mean, probably, what, 2/3 of every one of those ones I've reviewed has been in Como zone.
Yes.
I think I wrote the same thing on every one in terms of
Yeah,
you're getting to the point where we don't know what that 2-inch can support.
So, are we concluding today that the best thing that we can do for the first step of the Como project is to get a meter in somehow?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I think that would be the smartest thing, is to know how much flow is in that zone, or how much usage is in that zone.
So, are you in agreement with what we're talking about here, is that to do a good design solution for the Como zone, we need to know what the usage is of the Como zone
Yes.
by measuring it,
Yeah.
not calculating it.
Where would the meter be installed?
He was covering that.
I think in the PRV pit would be the best place if we could get it in there.
Is that
But
up
I'm
at
a
the
little bit.
Jungfrau?
The
Yeah.
PRV
It's
pit
on
Como.
It's on
Como.
with the Como Road,
Oh,
which
okay.
is
Como
about
Road,
the
actually.
length of this room.
But I mean,
Como
I
Road.
haven't
It's
even,
a
I mean,
short
I
road.
not
haven't
that
put
long.
eyes on that thing. I mean,
Okay.
It's a cement vault that's,
Okay, I've walked Como before, but I don't think I ever noticed the PRV pit.
Yeah,
it's
gonna be
above ground,
buried.
it's a cement structure above,
Is it?
comes right out of the ground.
Does
yeah.
it? I didn't,
Yeah.
I don't think I've even put eyes on it, honestly.
It's been a while since I walked
So
Como.
should we wrap up the Como
Yeah.
discussion by saying that we're agreeing the first step is, maybe you can swing by there today. It's on the, Como comes off St. Moritz and it runs east to west kind of. It's on the north side of the road
Okay.
and you can't miss it,
Yeah.
it's
If I'm going up Como, it's gonna be on my left. If I'm coming down Como, it's gonna be on my right.
correct.
Yeah.
And I don't know from the outside whether you could see,
I probably
you could
won't
see
be
the
able to.
size of it from the outside, roughly.
Is it a manhole? Just like
Yeah,
a,
it's got a cement, it's a cement structure that has a metal manhole cover on the top of it.
I may be able to pop it. If you allow, if you don't care, you know.
We don't mind.
Yeah, moving the football down the field.
Yeah.
Good idea. So we all set on Como?
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
So now we're gonna move to the final discussion of
Yeah, uranium.
uranium.
I know little about it, I would say. It's, you know, your treatment process is kind of like a softener, right? It's a cation exchange. I was talking with someone else at the office, trying to at least get my head around it a little bit in terms of like what you have to do with it. I don't know how you backwash it. If you backwash, because you'd be backwash, I don't know, like with backwash, if you're sending high concentrated, you know, water, uranium, back into the aquifer, and then you're just trying to pull it back out.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you can really just backwash that. So
In a
you're,
10-minute discussion with Ian last
Yeah.
week, he was recommending that one of the solutions could be a filtering system, a processing system. He did say that it has tanks.
yeah, I think it's like a softener. You know, it's a cylindrical tank. Water goes in, it gets, you know, the uranium, whatever ion that, you know, uranium 247, whatever it is. I don't know the thing, but there'll be a metal salt type of thing that will attach, and it grabs it, and it, you know, basically will pull it out of solution.
So you're talking about the processing tank. He's
through
talking about
chemistry.
a byproduct holding tank, which he says he knows of, he's heard of one place in Connecticut that accepts that, and it costs a lot of money.
Oh, to get rid of the.
To get
so
rid
yeah,
of it.
To get
once
rid of
the-
it.
We're not
once
putting it
you've-
back in the aquifer, we're
Yeah,
trucking it
once
in.
you've exhausted the solution that's in there that's pulling the uranium off, it can no longer, you know, it's pulled all the uranium off, it's all, you know, now another compound that's uranium plus whatever it is, and you gotta get rid of it. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, Ian would know more than I would about it. I've not done a uranium treatment system myself. I talked, you know, when I talked with the person at the office in Vermont, he talked about backwashing it, and I said, I don't know that you can, I just didn't know if that was something he's done before, or if it's just what he was anticipating would have to happen, but I don't think that's the solution, because you're gonna have high concentrated waste.
Yeah.
They have to pay to get rid of it.
Yeah.
You need to absorb it, collect it, and get rid of it, as opposed to backwash it.
Exactly.
Puts it back into the
Yeah.
system, back into the groundwater.
My recommendation with that is to try and talk with the people who sell that equipment to say, to get more information about how does it work? You know, what is your experience with it in terms of cost to operate? And then, you know, they I would guess they would have some resource to tell you what the process is for getting rid of the canisters or replacing them. And then, you know, call those places. If it's only one place in
Google
Connecticut,
uranium
yeah.
processing and for public
Yeah.
water systems and start from there, ask companies to come talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's how I would go about it. I would try and find out who sells the stuff that removes uranium, and then just really pepper them with, you know, how does it work? What do you do with it when you're done? How long does it last? How, you know, is it once I've run X number of gallons through it? I mean, I'm sure it has to do with the concentration of uranium that you have, and how much it's, you know, absorbing.
Right?
That would give you an idea of how long it would last. And then, you know.
My understanding is that we've been tickling the threshold of the warnings that the state requires us to send to the users.
Yeah.
This is the first, I don't know if we had to do a mailing. Did we do a mailing within the last 2 years? We got a warning.
No, there was just the one posting on the website that said that we had a hit. But there were no mailings that I remember
No, I
last
think so.
summer.
I thought Simply Water included something in the water bill last year.
In
The
the
consumer confidence report?
consumer report, yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it'll be in this year's consumer report as well.
So the notice that we're sending out, which we're paying Minuteman to publish and send out for us.
Yeah.
We have 30 days from April 25th to get it out to the consumers. And it has language in it that says, this is not an emergency.
Right.
Right.
And then further on down it says, if you have a health condition that makes you concerned about this, and it says to call the EPA hotline, first refer to your healthcare provider. And if you have questions, you can call the EPA hotline. So it's not like the state is saying that this is a dangerous situation to the consumers. But we need to get ahead of this. If it continues to cross the threshold that the state accepts as a minimum, then we should be prepared to start treating it, I think.
Have you been able to tell concentration versus, like, have you been pulling more water out of Muddy Beach over time? Like, are you maybe you're pulling from a larger radius type of thing? Or, I mean, things change. Someone could have blasted for a foundation.
Here's
all
the
of a
thing.
sudden, you
Here's
know.
the thing I think that contributed to it is the state of New Hampshire allowed the Rock House Mountain water system to do a deal with private property to put a well outside the actual boundaries of Rock House. It happens to be straight uphill from the Muddy Beach source. So they sunk a municipal well uphill, taking water that I believe flowed downhill into the bedrock wells of
Yeah.
Muddy Beach. That's the biggest change. And I believe Ian said, yeah, that's probably it.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was we had a environmental engineer who's a second homeowner in Eidelweiss that saw a discussion on Facebook and contacted me and said that he thought that the drought seasons should be charted. And I got the data from the state of our readings of uranium at the Muddy Beach wells. And there's a website that gives you a color graphical representation of the droughts for our area. And it matched up, is that every year that there was a drought, the following year, we had a uranium problem, or the uranium measurements rose.
Like,
But there was no drought last year. Matter of fact, we had damaging rain
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
So, kind of blew that out of the water for me.
I'm just doing a quick search. They recommend reverse osmosis as a better means to address uranium filtering than what you mentioned, ion exchange.
yeah.
They also have home treatments. People can get their own systems in their own homes to do the reverse osmosis, but we got a lot of research to do on this, figure out who makes these systems for more of an industrial, a bit larger scale
Right,
than just a
yeah.
home.
So do you think we covered this subject for now?
Yeah, because we're going to put out the notice. What we're taking, research actions.
In the minutes, was it that we asked Ian, and he agreed that he would tell the state that we're going to minimize the use of the Muddy Beach well,
Correct.
but we can't shut it off. If we
Right.
shut it off, the state requires us to seal
Correct.
it
Yeah,
Correct.
and permanently close it.
So as I understand, that'll mean the amount of water going into the overall water system from Muddy Beach is pretty minimal. I
Yeah,
don't know
you
what.
blend it out almost.
Right. I don't know. I don't know what percentage it would be, but
Here's the thing is that as it leaves Muddy Beach, it travels down the water main of Eidelweiss Drive. Before it can go anywhere within the system, it's trying to make, one way or another, it's trying to make its way to Rhinebeck. Now, it may be that it always went to Jungfrau, which I don't think it did,
Yeah.
but it may now do that because I think they closed off every other way that it could get there. If the impellers were powerful enough to push it to Rhinebeck, it was also powerful enough to push it to elevations on Oak Ridge Road, short of the Oak Station. If you could get to Rhinebeck and get to every elevation, that would allow the water to
Didn't
flow.
we have an issue with Oak was pulling too much water or something, and we had something where we wanted Muddy to run when Oak ran or something?
Mm-hmm. We had that
Forget-
set up for a
Forget
while.
how we had that, but it was some kind of.
The thing that opened my eyes to what Muddy Beach was capable of doing is when there was a recorder on the dead end of Burn years ago. I got to see what it recorded, and it recorded a square wave. And I'm looking at that because I was in the computer industry from '74. I've looked at square waves on oscilloscopes from 19 years old, and I was surprised that it showed the pressure in square waves. And I asked Paul about it, Paul Fluid, and he said that's a representation of Muddy Beach turning on and off.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, now I get the picture that Muddy Beach raises the pressure of the entire system to the elevation of Rhinebeck. And that doesn't happen because it's a forced main from the DPW well to Jungfrau. The rest of the system doesn't see the pressure changes when the DPW well comes on because there should be no houses on it.
Right.
No distribution lines come off of it. That may not be true anymore, but by mistake they might have put some houses on that. Anyway, so that's the image I have, the 3D image of what happens to this system
Yeah.
is Muddy Beach is capable of pushing the water.
Are there 2 boreholes at Muddy Beach? Two wells?
2 wells.
And they
One's
both
not
have
being used. It's one well that's primarily,
There's one at 100 feet and the other 300 feet. That's what Ian told us last week.
Yeah.
close together. They're in the same cone of influence.
Have you sampled them both for uranium?
That's the way the readings are coming from.
From both wells?
It's a
Or is it a
blend.
blend?
It's a blend.
So you don't necessarily know which well it's coming out?
No.
Correct.
That's correct. We do not at this point.
Although, I guess if only one well is running, you know which
yeah,
one's
Ian
coming out.
has
Yes.
that there,
Right.
yeah.
Yes. I thought you were asking, are both wells doing it if we turn the second one on? And I'm assuming it would, it's not that far away from,
Doesn't matter. I mean, those wells could be 10 feet apart and they might hit a different vein. I mean, you're drilling a tube into rock, and you're just, whatever veins you cross when you hit that tube is what water comes into it. So I mean, there's a good chance that it's similar water, but it's not a guarantee, I would
so you're
say.
proposing we test both wells individually to see what that tells us?
I don't think it would hurt. I mean, I don't know what a uranium test costs, but I think it would be money well spent to know, what if one well had no uranium, what would you do? Just use the other well? I mean, could you get away with that? And then maybe that only buys you some time, but it could give consumers some confidence that you're not sending, anything that has any kind of MCL, contaminant level limit that while you're doing more to figure out how you're gonna resolve it in the long term. Whether it's treatment or, you know, blend, you know, if there's a way to blend out so that you're below that concentration. And I don't, I mean, uranium kind of sounds scary. I think it is a naturally occurring thing, but
It is.
I think, you know, when you hear the word uranium, it's kind of like, yikes. But it's, so,
So should we ask Ian to, do you,
I'm trying to see if we actually discussed that. I seem to recall.
like, why are you only using one well there? Maybe there's a reason for that I'm not aware of, and
I thought there was something wrong with it.
I thought that the second well couldn't produce.
Oh, you know, I asked Ian, or someone asked Ian, when was the next sample going to be taken at Muddy Beach by Granite State Analytical? And he said maybe July. He said 2 wells, one about 100 feet, one about 300 feet. Deeper well, maybe the culprit was his opinion, but yeah, we really should have 2 separate samples from each individual well. So maybe we should contact Granite State Analytical.
Well, they need somebody to get the water out of the bottom of the well for them.
Right, we need to talk to Ian.
Yeah, okay.
does the pump work in the well?
Yeah, he didn't say that both pumps weren't operational.
Right.
It's just that he's not using one of them. So when is Ian due to come back here? It's
There's no
once-
schedule.
Once a month, so we should ask him to come to the next possible meeting for him?
Yeah, the next
Yeah.
one he can.
Yeah,
Or could we do this without him coming to the meeting, just have him,
can we just
give him a
remote?
work order?
Before or after a test is done.
We could send a work order.
Work order.
Asking him to,
Get samples,
To get samples before.
coordinate
Right.
with the testing company and
Yep.
get samples to them.
Yep,
But I'll make that a motion,
I'll second that.
let Jane actually be able to write it down. A motion to have Simply Water coordinate with Granite State.
Granite State Analytical.
To get samples from each of the Muddy Beach wells for uranium levels.
Okay.
Nancy seconds that.
sure,
Discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
3-0. That covered that? Any further on uranium for Nick?
No, I was gonna wait for this conversation before writing up the final verbiage on that piece of paper that needs to be, go to Minuteman Press and get sent out to everybody, so it's helpful.
I'll try and do a little of my own research just to familiarize myself with treatment options, and
Are there still 100 engineers at Du Bois and King? All of our,
there's 100 and, I don't know what our number is. It's over 100 employees. We're not all engineers, but.
so somebody out there may be processing uranium somewhere?
Yeah.
They might know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk with a couple folks and try and see, but it may be that I need to talk with, you know, I can talk with some people at,
We're gonna-
like Granite State Rural Water or something, and
We'll call companies too, like you suggested. I also, last time this happened and the environmental engineer was communicating with me, there was an online map that showed where uranium was suspected to be all over New Hampshire. And it's vast.
Yeah.
It's like naturally occurring. Over 50% of the ground coverage of the entire state. The likelihood of drilling a well where there's going to be uranium is pretty high. It's a matter of how high.
yeah.
It wasn't like I saw a place that said, okay, all we need to do is drill over here in Eidelweiss so we can avoid it. Luckily, the DPW well is going into the aquifer and it never shows any.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious, could you pump could you pump that well hard for a little while? Like, if it's not a well that you really need to use, maybe you do some testing on that in terms of like, pump it hard for a few weeks, see if you can flush some of that
Just
out,
don't put
you
it
know?
into the distribution system, pump it
Right.
out to the ground. yeah?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you'd be able to pump more water if you're not pumping against the pressure of the distribution system.
Right.
You could pump, you know,
That's a good idea. I like that.
Well, they
I don't
just-
know.
We just did flushing last
Yeah.
week, but I would think that they would have that set up where they could, since they could flush each of the wells.
I mean, that's, you know, you could end up with higher concentrations as a result of that. I'm not saying it's gonna fix it, but
Yeah.
it may change it.
You may
and I
learn
mean,
something.
You may learn something, and I mean, maybe that's, yeah, I mean, if you wanna use that well and have it available for the long term, I think you gotta kind of figure out what,
What's going
We
on.
look at it as a backup, should the DPW well need a pump change, and that takes a few days, that we have a supply of water to help us get through, not having Muddy Beach, not having DPW for a day or so.
yeah. You got more storage now at Rhine-Arc, so you can probably, that buys you a little bit of time, but, you know, depending on when that DPW well goes out, probably.
If it's in the wintertime and
Yeah, it would, if it's President's Day weekend or something.
that tower's got
Of course it
30% ice in it. That's the thing about those towers that I don't like, is that when we talked to the tower company years ago and decided against the tower,
Yeah, we didn't do that one.
it was because of ice
Yeah.
formation that the guy told us about,
Yeah,
which was huge. And that, the way around that was a circulator to keep the water moving in the tower in the wintertime so it didn't freeze, which is electricity, which is costly.
Yeah.
So,
I think they make a Solar Bee, I think is the name of the company, that makes these mixers that are
solar driven.
solar driven,
Ah.
you know?
And the guy said the shape of the ice in there was driven by the sun. It wasn't a perfect
Really?
symmetrical shape. Is that it was a guillotine type thing, and then because it was that shape, it scraped the inside of the tank as it rose and fell with the level of the water. It's like,
Yeah.
wow. Let's not do that. And then another administration came in, and boom, we have a tower. It's like, how'd that happen? But
Wasn't me.
no, no, it wasn't, but it wasn't anybody in this room.
well, thank you, sir.
Continuity.
Pleasure to see you again.
You too, yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Nice to see everyone.
I'm happy that we're going to be working together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice to have an intelligent
Do you want
Okay.
to write down Jeff's phone number
So,
if he wants to
in terms of,
touch Jeff,
do you,
get in touch with Jeff?
should I prepare a proposal to do some of the Como zone stuff, or you guys wanna do a
Yes,
little
we'd
bit
like,
more?
yeah, a proposal to get the metering done, get that installed and done would be step one, I think. Are we in agreement on that?
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we would not necessarily be that involved in getting the metering done. I mean, if you guys can do the metering, that would give us some confidence in that we would be getting data that we wouldn't have to like try and pull out of some other way, like doing hours of, you know,
Yeah.
review of your water usage, and then, like I said, trying to do percentages of homes, and then trying to figure out which ones are full-time and which ones aren't, and things like that.
So you were gonna go to see what the Como hardware
Yeah,
looked like?
I'll go take a look at it, try and
And
get an idea.
do you wanna write us an email telling us what you suggest we do to get a meter in there and get
Yeah.
you metered numbers?
Yeah,
And we'll do the project without you having to do any engineering? I don't know if you wanna specify the meter or,
yeah,
Oh, whether Ian
I
does
can
that?
do some of that, I can do some of that. I'll write you an email and tell you how confident I am in what I can do and what I can't do based on what I see.
okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
We
you.
got-
Oh, one
we
moment,
got
Nick.
Jeff's
Is-
number
is-
for you.
Is Tony working today?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay, no, just in case you wanted to hook up with Jeff DiMartino, who was here before
Yeah.
regarding Grissom, his number's on here.
Okay.
But sometimes his phone doesn't work, so he's often with our second DPW guy, Tony Eldridge.
Okay.
His phone always works.
Okay, I'm gonna just put these.
Assuming
guys on the
Tony's
phone.
working today, but I'm sure, you know,
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so at 10:43, we move on to the scheduled appearance of Kerry McNiven.
Can we hold off for a second?
Yep,
We've got the blow-off repair work, that Simply
Simply
Water
Water,
is
yep.
looking for us to create the work orders.
yep. Is that on one work order or?
No,
No?
nope, it's
So,
each work
did you
order.
see this?
I did see that. There were
Okay.
several different areas that,
Yes.
yeah.
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 Should that be separate work orders for each one of those, or
Yeah,
one work order? You say yes?
he
He wants separate
wants
ones.
separate work orders.
And
That's a good idea.
I think doing separate would make it easier for us to track what gets done or fixed at each blow-off. Because we'll have a list of parts that are needed for each blow-off.
These are blow-offs at the end of dead ends of water mains that have plastic piping that come out of the ground as a valve. And in the springtime, they open it up to get all the water that hasn't been moving through the dead end out. And the plows can come and catch these plastic pipes and rip them off the ground and move them a distance away, and he'd pick them up and throw them on the other side of the road like they did at Visp. Can you do that? I'll make a motion out of this.
Yeah.
So he's suggesting that we fix blow-offs at Visp, Adelboden, Upper Aspen, Upper Winnegon, St. Moritz, and Grissom. So I'll make a motion that we create individual work orders to get this list of blow-offs repaired by Simply Water. Nancy, do you second that for
Second.
discussion? Discussion with him?
No, straightforward to me.
Nancy? Discussion?
No, it's fine.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0 to create these work orders. Do you have anything else on the list before we all set to go to Kerry?
Yep.
Mrs. McNiven, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today, or allowing me to speak today. I represent the Eidelweiss Property Owners Association, and I am just passing you our proposed event list
Wow.
for this upcoming summer.
Pardon.
Some of them already.
And all the way into November. A lot of them need to be determined. And probably the biggest thing that we need to talk about is that Touch a Truck event that involves the DPW workers. Because we don't want it to cost the village any money in overtime. So we're looking probably at a weekday, and we want to make sure that it works for the DPW.
And you've talked to the DPW?
I talked to them at the annual meeting, would they be interested in doing this? And they said yes. But we need to make sure that we have your permission and then a date,
So
time.
the phrase touch a truck paints a picture for me of kids climbing over fire engines and getting into ambulances and seeing the inside of the cab of a fire engine. And
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
so then I pictured the DPW guys lifting kids into the 7400, the grader, and thought, oh no,
No.
that would be dangerous. So what do you mean by touch a truck?
They have the ability, well, to see the inside of the
We're talking
truck.
kids or adults or,
Well, the adults would come to meet your DPW workers. That's
which is a good thing.
Yes.
Yes.
That will be the other thing.
That's
So-
not that dangerous, I don't
No. Although personally, I'd love to get in one of those trucks. But anyway, it's up to you guys as to what they can and cannot get into.
I
If
think,
we have little,
I think
littles.
Tony telling people how the grader works, we shot a video of Gooby Chick operating the John Deere grader that YouTube has found fascinating. I just threw it up there and I think there's 6,000 views of it since it went up years ago. So the grader is a fascinating piece of equipment. Most people don't recognize the word grader. And so seeing what we have for equipment would be good for the taxpayers. And arranging it so that we're not paying overtime would be a good thing. Midweek though, you say, huh?
Well, that's how we don't pay overtime.
Right. So like a Friday afternoon?
That
when
would
peop-
work.
When more people may be here?
And we thought July or earlier August when kids are not back in school.
So kids would be there possibly.
Yeah.
That is a piece of it too. They're
Okay.
fascinated with anything that
Yeah.
moves dirt.
Can we agree that they're not gonna climb into the stuff? Climbing into the grader is a tricky thing for
Yeah, no, I don't.
a worker to
yeah.
do.
I think we need to, the way we word this, or the way the EPOA words it, it's really an informational session for adults who want to know how our equipment and meet our DPW workers, but children are welcome, you know.
If we could not use the phrase "touch a truck" because that
Okay.
it has a meaning now.
Yeah.
Right,
That's a
because
marketing
touch.
term.
Well,
Meet,
you can touch, which is different than get into.
yeah. Meet the DPW and see and hear about the equipment would be
Learn about,
learn about the
learn about our
equipment.
learn about your,
But avoid touch a truck. I think that the come on to, that you're going to get inside the truck because we haven't talked to them about that yet.
well, we just provide a photographer, so they're gonna get their pictures in front of this big
You got a
equipment.
drone
Yeah.
flying through them.
Like Santa Claus.
So I guess we need to talk to them a little bit more about it, but I would say that based on this little discussion, if it's done right, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if people want to see the inside of the garages they pay for. That used to be a thing the EPOA did as part of their charter, is they went inside all the buildings and did an evaluation of where the stuff, what the state of everything was, because the property owners pay for it.
Well, I think you're envisioning this event to take place at DPW too?
We
Since
want to
the
make
grader's
it
right there anyway.
accessible for people, you know. Are they likely to come over to the office? I don't know.
We could set it up at Hutwell parking lot, for example. But that's based on how much space is being taken by
Yeah.
every random company and snowmobile.
Whereas
owner.
DPW do is right along, I mean, it's easy
Right,
access
it's
from
right on
Eidelweiss
Eidelweiss
Drive.
Drive.
Parking, if you get 10 cars parked there, it's
Yeah.
pretty jammed up already. Requires some thought.
Okay.
What's the biggest area we have to park and set this stuff up?
What do you think?
I'm inclined to say DPW two. DPW one, they'd have to come in the back or go around the building to get in.
Yeah,
A lot of space.
There'd be a tendency to start parking near the wellhead, and that's
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
protected area,
Right.
so that's
And
requires too
Hutwell,
much management.
if you move the grader and the other equipment at Hutwell, there's not much parking left
right.
with
Right.
it either, so DPW two may be the best bet.
Yeah, and
then
if
take
a lot of
peek
people
in the
come,
garage, as Mark suggested.
it's a short walk from Hutwell parking lot to DPW too,
Right.
so,
It's a dangerous stretch of road there too,
People
coming
fly.
downhill.
yeah.
Yeah, we could put some caution signs out, slow traffic down.
They're gonna end up parking in the road if you get a good turnout.
Well, maybe can we relocate the speed bumps temporarily for that day, so that people
Easier-
driving
easier
have to
said-
slow down?
Easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm just,
Those are.
Let's say we need to run this, the DPW will have some ideas too. They'll have some insight that we don't have into how this should be done. But I bet you they're game for it. I bet you they want to do it.
Didn't one of them say, Carrie, that, oh, we'll have to clean the trucks?
Yes.
Good excuse.
Put on a good face, right?
So what would you like me to do? Would you like me to contact them personally? Do you want me to run it through you guys? How do you want us to move forward?
I think you should come back to another meeting after we give Jeff some heads up and he gets to talk to Tony about it,
Okay,
if you're okay with that.
I'm
When-
okay with that.
Because
Tony's here, and, I mean, Jeff's here, and, yeah.
Yeah.
so when would you like to come back?
Oh, I have to look. Sorry. Busy woman.
I figured.
Not next week. The week after I'm on vacation,
All right.
and the week after I'm on vacation.
Gee.
Such a life.
I can-
No.
I know.
Well, it's really only 1 week, but that covers 2 Tuesdays, so.
Oh.
We travel, we fly
Yeah.
out on a Tuesday
Don't
and
take
fly.
it.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
it's looking ugly, that's all I'm gonna say on Tuesday, so Doug may come instead of me.
That's
Okay.
fine.
Talk to Jeff next week, and then the following week, maybe we
2 weeks from now, we'll have the discussion, we'll give Jeff the heads up as soon as possible, so he has a week, or at least a week to think about it. Okay,
could. We're basically looking for an okay to use district facilities, district space, rather, the beach and so forth, for these activities.
and coordinate the equipment and time, and employees for it.
But things like the cookout and the ice cream social.
Yeah, I meant to ask, are refreshments gonna be served at this?
Absolutely.
Of course,
There's no event that the EPA doesn't do that doesn't have some kind of snack.
cookies, yes.
And they're good at it.
Did in August, we have leftovers.
Yeah, if we have leftovers from the cookout, we, if it's in August, we might just set up a grill, who knows?
All set with that?
What?
We're all set with that then?
Yep,
Move
as
on to the
long
next
as
subject?
you have looked over the list and you're okay with what we've proposed.
Okay, we're looking at the list here too, huh? Music on the beach, do you have, are you talking to Stephen Hadachuk at all?
I already have, we just
Nice.
have to,
You've never heard Stephen?
yeah,
It's good.
Very
We have.
good.
He rocked the lodge twice.
okay. So yes, I have talked to him, he was the one who proposed the 13th, he gave us a quote on
His
price.
contract would require you buying a case of Tuckerman IPA though.
Mark spoiled him. And everybody in IPA.
Okay,
He does need power.
Power, yeah.
So Carrie said, indicated that she's got a connection with a person who lives right beside Cruces, a very small beach. I'm gonna reach out to the people at 72 Eidelweiss that live right beside Eidelweiss Beach to see if we could plug into their electric. I'd like to, and this is a project long-term for probably the advisory, citizens advisory group, but I'd like to begin the process of just exploring data gathering to add some kind of permanent power at Eidelweiss for some kind of events like this. So it would have to be grant funded, not, not anything that we would look to the taxpayers for. Something, I have no idea how it would configure at this point. I'd just like a green light to just begin data gathering on it and some research.
There a street light
You know, nothing.
near Eidelweiss Beach?
There's a pole right at the end of the boat launch drive at Eidelweiss, but that's the closest power
Oh.
there. So one option would be to have them put a meter there and an outlet. I don't know. There's several ideas we've been kicking around, but it's a long-term project. I'd just like to have a green light that it's okay to at least start researching that for long-term.
I would be okay with that.
And where is this again?
And Eidelweiss Beach,
Okay.
that's the best venue for something like this, because it's got the space.
We all set with the list?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move on to the next topic. At,
thank you.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. At 10:57, we'll move on to administrators report. Application for TAN. Donahue, Chuck, or Giudella. Do you want me to speak to this?
Well, yes.
Okay. So, we need to get a letter, opinion letter on the TAN from a lawyer for the bank, and we're back to pursuing Northway Bank. The law firm recommended by the Mitchell Group was Rennell at Divine Millimet,
Yeah.
who quoted us $2,500 to write an opinion letter. And in communicating back to her that we actually is switching away from the bank because her calculation was the interest rate paying one more point was cheaper than paying her the $2,500. She reduced her fee to $1,500, reducing it by $1,000 to write the opinion letter.
Cool.
In the meantime, we found out the Bank of New Hampshire also was going to require the opinion letter. So now we don't have a reason to go to Bank of New Hampshire. We can go to the cheaper interest rate by 1 point to Northway. But it's still $1,500.
Yeah.
In the invoice that we haven't paid yet to the Mitchell Group, I looked at it, and if you add up the activities that the attorney at Mitchell Group did and wants to charge us for, it came up to about $220 to tell us that they weren't going to do it. I went back into the records that Jennifer gave me of what we paid last year to Donahue Tucker Chiadella, and we paid about $220 for the legal opinion letter.
Right.
So $220 to tell us I'm not going to do it, and $220 to say here's your letter, and $1,500 to do the letter that cost us $220 last year. This is the world that you live in, Woodard.
Yes.
So, once again, I froze, saying I need to talk to the commissioners about this, and I think we might need to talk. So, the other recommendation I got from the lady at the Northway Bank, who was recommending law firms that have done these for them locally. One of them was Hastings Law Firm in Freiburg, and I called yesterday and left a message for a gentleman named Jason, and I'm betting no one called back yesterday?
Yep, there's a message.
Oh. So there's an avenue I guess I need to pursue before taking your time, but that's kind of that's the administrator's report, because she needs this TAN to be done. As far as where the TAN is, some rough calculations have us at a bank balance at Bank of New Hampshire of operating funds of, we said 140, 145.
I think so.
At the time, the bank statement for the fraudulent ACH transfer made our headlines. The bank balance was 177. That's with the 14,000 gone. So we're operating, as we do budgeting, we have to remember that we have an expenditure of 14,000 that we haven't got any kind of refund yet, and we're pursuing that with the insurance company, who
Correct.
asked if the Madison Police Department got a search warrant for the bank, which I found intriguing.
Interesting.
Yes. So stay tuned for that drama. So that's where we are. Is I think now, based on Jennifer saying there's a message, we need to find out what Hastings.
Okay, so there's one more law firm we're checking out to see what their quote would be to put together this letter.
As the clock is ticking off,
I know.
Right.
As our yeah, exactly.
Jennifer
As our
says
balance goes
Jennifer
down.
says all these lawyers know that
Oh, they do.
and have us under the gun.
That's
They do.
that's like unethical or bordering on.
No.
Yeah. And also, did you also look like you also reached out to Attorney Bolt once again just to see if he'd do it one timer?
Yeah, having seen him do it for 220, I thought, you want to make a quick 220, pull your file out and just change the date.
And he just came
And he
back
said,
and nixed that.
no.
That's,
And I'm sure there's an iceberg of reasons that,
yes,
It's worth a shot.
it was worth a shot.
yes,
It was
I
worth
had
a
to
shot.
do it,
Okay.
due diligence.
Would it be helpful to get this thing continuing to move, if we gave permission that if it's less than $1,500
Do it.
at Hastings, sign it and go? Would that be helpful if we
Yeah, I
set
don't have
something?
another law firm. I could go back to Butterfield, that municipal group, and say, how come the bank recommends that you do this, and how come you're charging us $220? I guess that's non-public session.
Right.
That.
And didn't you say you have to consider what we would have to pull for information?
That's the other thing is, for the 1,500, she's still talking about
Yeah.
us doing a cash flow.
We've done that. There's one on file.
For this time period,
I know Alexis was doing it
Alexis was gone.
in
Last year.
August. So it'd be half of last year.
I think it's the cash flow of what we're borrowing the money against. Like they would want to know how much money we have in the bank, when we're going to get the July payment, what payments we have. What does the cash flow look like for the TAN that they're writing a legal opinion on?
All that information's on the cash flow check.
So it's a forward-looking cash flow versus what's happened in the past.
Into 2024.
No,
No.
That's what I'm saying.
but we can work it from the template.
Yeah, we could take that template and just project outward.
I know.
Let's see if we have to do it first
Yeah.
of all.
When you say we, white man.
Glad to pitch in here, no problem, since
But first, we need to locate it.
yes.
You know,
I mean,
I'm hoping that it's a simpler one than we use to do every month. Is that we're basically saying, here's how much is in the bank right now. Here's when we expect a payment from the town, which is the taxes are collected in July for the biannual payment. Here's when we think it arrives, and here are the payments. Here's our rate, which last year was $55,000. I know that out of my head. And then we put in the big payments, like we're not making the payment for the grader anymore. It's insurance payments, stuff like that. That we don't need to do that chart that we do for ourselves, the monthly. We just say, here's what the rest of 2024 looks like for us.
Yeah.
Well, if it comes down that we have to do it, I can work with whoever I
Yep.
can work with,
Yep.
and we can pull that information together. All the information's in the office, it's just a matter of.
Okay,
getting
that's something we'll do after we find out what Hastings'
Needed.
answer is.
as long as they're looking at for a forward-looking cash flow, that should not be too onerous.
So I'll make the motion simple as, the motion is that the board is allowing me to sign an agreement to get a legal opinion letter for a TAN.
Second,
Through Hastings.
don't name,
Don't name
Okay.
anyway, I'm not saying that.
because
Okay.
it might be someone
If it
else.
defaults to
Yeah.
going back to Divine Millimet,
Yeah.
I don't need to come back to the board.
Correct.
We don't have time.
All right.
Correct.
Yep.
So it's gonna be either 1,500 and work, or whatever Hastings proposes that is less,
Correct.
easier and less.
Yep.
So Nancy, do you second that to make it easier and second it?
Second, yes.
Nancy seconds. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. Next on the administrator's report list is beaches, porta potties. Mr. Portable restrooms. So first I'd like to thank Kate and Linda upstairs for helping us with information about what the town does as far as renting porta potties for the Madison beaches. And we got a quote from the same company. And I guess we should focus the discussion on, I'll make a motion that we approve the quote. Do you have the quote there?
Second. I looked
Yeah, I
at it.
saw that. It
I
just-
looked at it.
So what I asked them for was, so it's renting 5. We decided to put one on Pard Shore Beach, or affectionately called Hidden Beach, as well as the 4 other main beaches. There's 5 restrooms at $500 per week for 4 weeks. I said starting mid-June through, I believe, mid-October. And it's $50 a week
For cleaning.
for 4 weeks to come and clean it each week with restroom with hand sanitizer.
So we're basically looking at, how many weeks? 12 weeks? Little-
12 party weeks,
16.
as opposed to man weeks.
Well, they're saying per 4-week period, so I'm assuming, it's 28 days, right? 28 days, if they're $500 or
June,
$550.
July, August. 4 weeks gets us to September. Maybe, I did say you could tweak this based on what Madison's is for efficiencies of delivery and pickup.
Right.
So maybe she just matched.
Okay. And usually, the beach use goes way down after Labor Day.
It would have to.
And I just saw this morning, I wanted to go back, what do you, anybody remember what we budgeted for Parks and Recreation? So, it looks like for the entire period, we're looking at somewhere, I'm gonna round it up, $2,000. I seem to recall we budgeted 3,000 to 5,000, somewhere in that range. So I could be way off.
Parks and Rec. 7,000.
Oh, well then I think this will only be no more than half that.
Right.
This should be 550 times 4.
Well, even if let's say it's five.
I thought it was 5.
Okay, 5 is 2,750. Let's say it's,
The code has 5 standard restrooms
Right.
times 1 weekly service at 500 per 4 weeks. And then the next thing is 5 rental standard restrooms with hand sanitizers, $50. So each unit costs $550 per
Yeah.
week.
Right.
oh,
times
each
5.
wait. It's quantity 5. Are we? Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I thought they were charging us. Look, forget the extras cleaning, just for the basic quantity 5 porta potties, which we're paying $500 for all 5 per 4-week period, or is it 5? I'm confused now. Whether it's 500 per porta potty. See, there's no extended price. If there was if this was a $500 for a single porta potty, there should be an extended price times 5.
There's no totals at the bottom. Shouldn't have a total at the
The
bottom.
thing that's labeled total has a number of 550, which is adding the 500 to the 50.
Right, which I understand we're getting 5 porta potties, which will cost us $550 for every 4-week period. That's the way I read this.
That's the
'cause-
way I would read
That's
it.
the way I
yes,
read it.
yeah, because there's no extended price. It's not per porta potty. It's for the 5 of them.
Correct.
So
So it's $100 each.
yeah, basically $100 piece for every 4-week period.
Do we want them to requote this to make it clear?
Well, I think we just need to make sure we know what we're getting into, yeah, but make sure that is the intent. But I read it that way, and even if we did it for 6 weeks, that's $3,300 with the extra cleaning. So it seems like a good deal.
It's a great deal.
Well,
I mean, if you've-
I have no idea what they paid last year for whatever company they used, but it seems to me it's a.
Five standard restrooms, 1 times weekly service. Frequency, 1 times per week. $500 per 4 weeks. So they're servicing the 5 restrooms for 4 weeks for $500.
Mm-hmm.
Is the way I read it.
That's
Yeah.
me too.
For 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
So
it
the
would
total
be
cost
that
of
times
doing
3.
weekly service is $500.
Right.
Then
Right.
5 restrooms with hand sanitizers is $50 a week for $550. So the total charge is $1,050.
Well, the hand sanitizer is going to cost us $50 for each 4-week period for all 5
Yes.
porta
Correct.
potties.
Yes.
Right.
So $500 to rent the porta potties for 4 weeks and $50 to have hand sanitizers in them changed every week
Yep.
for a total of $550.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I read it.
So I'll make a motion, do we have a motion to discuss this?
Not yet.
I'll make a motion that you give me authorization to agree to this contract for $550 based on clarification with my call to
Are they
Olivia.
pumping them out every week?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
So yeah, we would want a bottom line price based on how many weeks we would like them at each of the beaches. Whether that's, I don't know, 12 weeks?
It's 5 weeks per 4 week, $550 per 4 weeks. So that's the motion on the floor. Nancy, do you second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Should I hang on to this? I'll do it
Yeah,
from the
you
office.
can. I have
No,
a copy. Okay.
I don't want to become the filing cabinet. Okay, so now we're still doing administrator's report.
Can I ask a question? Are you gonna pump out the old houses, the old?
Well, let's talk about that for 2 minutes.
Okay, sorry.
I personally think that we need a committee that has people that are interested in the benefit of the historic looking outhouses and don't like seeing purple plastic, blue plastic units like we're renting here. And that would require people figuring out how to get what's in those tanks below the outhouses out of there, which I don't think was thoroughly examined by the previous board. And I think it takes a new design for the thrones.
These are existing outhouses?
There's one at 4 out of the 5 beaches.
Okay.
And they're dual, 2 seats, no waiting, is what the barber shops used to say in the old
So there's
days.
2 separate spaces. Yeah.
2 luxury units.
Oh, God. No.
Um,
But no
they
one
can't be
uses
tipped
them?
over by people that are gonna
They used
do jail
to,
time.
even 2 years ago.
They were using them?
Last year was the first
Okay.
year they were
Yeah.
not used.
So that's the direction I would like to move personally, is that we figure out how to bring those things back to life and redesign them so that what happened to them can't happen again. And we did have somebody that went around and serviced, cleaned the inside of them and put various products into them to keep them usable. Hand sanitizer and paper and stuff. So, that's my answer to Carrie's question.
Right. And we
If you
did-
want to,
No, we discussed that before, that was a future-looking project. We don't have enough time this
so
year
let's
to
say
do
the
that.
board is in general agreement, that's what we'd like to do, it's just, we needed to get something in place because we weren't gonna solve it in time for this summer. So we have this summer and winter to solve the problem. That's one of the many things that we can bring up at the EPOA with this idea, is that we have teams of people that are interested in doing things they're interested in doing. This is a good one. Okay?
Yep.
So next on the administrator's report is the uranium report, customer listing from QuickBooks.
Yep, he talked about that a little bit.
Yep. Yeah, Jennifer sent me 3 different versions, the PDF, the Excel, and then there's another type of, Is it-
Excel type.
it
yeah.
is an Excel type file,
Yeah.
but I never understood the reason that particular type of file. But anyway, that's what will be sent to Minuteman Press, so I think that's all they need to create the labeling. I will verify that today with my contact. My goal is to get everything he needs by the end of this week, so that next week it should be a done deal.
And ship. Next on your list is New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services dam inspections. Still no date provided. They asked us to respond before May 8th, and anytime after May 8th, they would tell us when they're coming, because we want to be there to see the inspection happen. And Nancy points out historically, they let us know 1 or 2 days before they actually arrive.
Yep.
Yay.
Because they're doing it against a schedule that I'm sure involves the weather at other locations and blah, blah, blah.
So.
So it will happen when you're on vacation. so
Yeah,
that's
that's probably
really
what happened.
interested in seeing.
Yeah.
And we'll make up stories about what happened for you.
All right, just have Madison TV tape it.
Again, we don't get enough notice.
I know. That's-
We'll try to record highlights on cell phones
Yeah.
for highlight reel for you.
These are our tax dollars at work.
Last on the administrative report list is the Bank of New Hampshire paid checks authorization for direct deposit. Okay, so I don't know if you saw paychecks asking if there
Yep.
was a
Debit hold.
debit block.
Block.
Debit block, yes, I saw that.
So did you reach the same conclusion that we did? Is, no, the answer is no, we don't need a lot of data from paychecks to allow them to do debit withdrawals to do payroll because there's no debit block on your accounts? Which had us going, what? Sounds like debit blocks are a good thing. So the answer was no, there's no debit blocks. The paychecks doesn't need to give us ABA routing numbers, and they can just do it. And,
Well, I saw you contacted the bank
yep,
with the information that Paychex was requesting.
and the answer was, and I gave them all the information from paychecks to do it if there was a block. And they said there's no block, and that was the answer. They should have no problem. Now I could go back to paychecks and say to Greg, tell me what it means to have no debit block. Why is this a good thing in general? Should we ask for a debit block?
Find out more. what
If
that
you
means.
notice, it wasn't the fraud department at the bank that answered the question. They passed it to cash management, who are the people that are telling us there's 2 software applications that if we got ACH transfers back, which we don't intend on doing, which is why we're using paychecks, they're the ones answering the questions.
Right.
They also answered the question of what is this 8-digit XXXX number with 4 real digits? What is that on our bank statement? And they said that's an internal number.
Their internal number?
Their internal number. Try to make sense out of that. Why is it on our bank statement?
Right.
I don't feel so good about banks anymore.
Yeah,
Did any of that help you?
well, is it putting any doubt on, I mean, literally thousands upon thousands of companies use Paychex as their payroll service, so I think we're okay on that side. I don't think we need to worry on that side. It's the bank side we're worried about.
And I didn't know if one of those programs that the bank said can be added to the bank accounts,
Mhm.
if one of those programs would secure the bank account by stopping electronic money coming out,
You mean the block,
the block.
right?
It seems to me that we should have a telephone conversation with somebody in the cash management department that's answering these questions that seem to be the ones that they were leading us to. If we were gonna go back to ACH transfers, they were gonna put these 2 applications in place. And I hate to add it to my list, I would start by asking Greg for his opinion, his knowledge of what this debt block is, or whether he would recommend that we actually do it as a safety precaution
Yeah.
from other people doing debits like they're gonna do on our accounts.
Well,
I don't
we
know how it
already have
works.
companies using the debit that you authorized to
Right.
have these companies, so we would all have to take into account each company that's
Authorized to
Well,
do
authorized
debit?
to use
there is a
debit.
difference between an ACH transaction
And a debit,
and a debit.
yeah.
Greg said it's a big difference between us telling the bank to push money out like we did when we
Right.
were doing direct deposit
I see.
versus paychecks doing a pull from the bank.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. yeah.
Right,
I
He
gotcha.
did say that.
Yep,
right.
So what I don't know is how a company like Paychex gets going with the bank. Did they just say, we have an agreement with the Village District of Eidelweiss to pull payroll money out? And the bank says, okay? And no one's asking us? How does Paychex prove to the bank that we're a customer and this should be done? Based on the contracts that we signed?
Mm-hmm.
By the way, to sign, you ever do a DocuSign thing for an agreement with like Paychex? We need a copy on file. It just flies through and tells you to sign. You click, sign,
Yeah.
sign, sign. It doesn't show you what the contracts are. It does, but it does it like this.
Should be a way of freezing that, yeah.
There's an option at the end to download them.
So I want to get a copy of all those. We just needed to get it going to get this payroll
Right.
done.
Right.
So is that enough on paychecks authorization for direct deposit? It's actually for, direct deposit or payroll, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to clarify, and if I'm going off on a tangent, just stop me. But when you said there's a difference, obviously there is a difference between ACH and debit. We still have a debit card?
Yes.
That's what you're talking about?
Yes.
The vendors we've been paying using a debit card, which we want to shift to a credit card.
Correct.
Okay.
So once the credit card comes in, we'll have that all that updated. But right now, there are things that are authorized for monthly on the debit card.
Okay. So wouldn't we want, once we have the credit card and we have shifted all known vendors that have periodic and regular payments that they used to use the debit card shifted to the credit card, wouldn't we just put a blanket debit block on our account?
It was still using the debit card to go purchase.
I understand that, I
Yeah.
understand. Oh, well, wouldn't we use the credit card for future purchases?
I don't know, what was your intention of having a debit card to begin with?
Well, that precedes this board.
Because nobody got because nobody had a
I think-
credit card
I-
application.
I think we came to the conclusion that we need a credit card not only for those vendors and suppliers who just bill the credit card, but for any future purchases. Jeff goes out and buys some supplies at FW Web, uses the credit card. Therefore,
us.
we can approve all these, we can look at all these purchases before any of these things get, we will be actively paying. We will
We can look at a
proactively be
statement
paying.
before we
Why
actually
the-
pay the bill, which
Right.
we can't do with the debit card.
Right, whereas otherwise,
Yeah,
they're just taking
yeah,
automatically from our account
reconciling, yeah.
before we even create a manifest.
So we don't know where we are with the credit card yet, right?
I know Dinah had said she had turned in the application,
So it's at Northway Bank.
it's at Northway Bank,
Okay.
so it's a matter of having it show up, you know?
And another thing that I think we discussed is that we wanted to shut off any and all credit cards at Lowe's
Yes,
and maybe get new ones issued, or one new one issued.
one new one.
So if you can make a note of that, Jennifer, we need to go to Lowe's and see.
Do we have a Lowe's credit card because we thought we were getting a better rate than just a standard bank issued credit card?
It's another thing that came from previous boards.
No, I get that, I understand that, but the point is that if we only had one credit card, then we only have one bill we're dealing
You're
with.
saying we don't need a Lowe's card if we have a credit
Only
card?
unless they gave us some sort of special deal that saved us money, but I'm not sure that's the case.
I don't know that either.
I don't see any offers coming through
Yeah.
via email saying, you spend $10,000, you're gonna get special
Yeah, I
financing.
I
I
agree.
don't see any of that.
I don't see any advantage of having
So
multiple
we'll
credit
shut them
cards.
off, we may not turn one back on.
Correct, I think we're safer with just one single credit card,
Okay.
which we can audit every single month. Easily.
All right, we'll move off administrators' reports to, we have nothing under old business or table items. So at 11:28, we'll move to commissioners' reports. And I'll start off and say, went down and looked at, I forgot to tell Jeff when he was here. Jeff had concerns about brush being in the drainage ditch at the corner of Little Shore Drive and Middle Shore Drive. And I looked at it and saw that that is all on private property. It's not a ditch maintained by us. It's the natural flow of the brook that goes through the culvert at Yuri's house and crosses the road and enters pretty deep into that new house lot. And so if they are creating a problem in the flow of that water, they're creating a problem on their property. And I don't see how the village is involved with that.
But there is a sign right near saying no disposal. I thought it was a picture.
So it's no dumping.
No dumping.
No dumping.
yeah.
And I took a picture of that. and I wanted to ask people through media, is there a story here? Why somebody put that sign up? I don't know I don't know anything about that sign going up.
I don't either.
It's not the village we didn't put it up.
No.
So, that's that one. We took a look at that.